evening, everybody. Thank you for waiting on us. We apologize for the delay, but we're so happy to see you here. We will now call this meeting to order. June, I'm looking for a couple of people. Are you able to call the roll?
Yes,
all righty.
Ms. Manser.
Here.
Mr. Abarca.
Present.
Ms. Cortez. Here. Mr. Hogan.
Here.
Dr. Jones. Mr. Wasserstrom. Ms. Wolfsey.
Here.
Here's Dr. Jones.
Here. All right, so we've got everyone here. So at this point, I would like to turn my colleagues' attention to the agenda. Is there any objection to the approval of the agenda as presented? Okay. Seeing no objection, the agenda is approved. For this evening's calendar, or for this evening's agenda, we will have 3 individuals for public comment that they are going to address the board this evening. The public comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. So our first speaker this evening is Mr. DeMonte Rochester from the DAC-X. Thank you.
Good evening, Dr. Bedell, members of the board. The DAC-X executive board met this weekend to talk about our goals for the new year, as well as our summer retreat, which will be discussed at our May 29th meeting. Also, we talked about our past year, the accomplishments we did for the past year, and then our goals going to the new year and then we'll talk about our new officers going into our next meeting, which will be on the 29th. Also, as a member of the Economic Development Reform, we're just wanting to know, as a member of Economic Reform, we're just wanting to know the position that KCPS was on question 1. Thank you for your time.
I now invite Janet Parks to speak on question 1. Welcome.
And good evening, Dr. Bedell and school board members. I am Jan Parks, and I am speaking for the Coalition of Kansas City Economic Development Reform, better known as CKCEDR. And this is regarding question 1 on the city ballot, June 18th. We are fighting an uphill battle to pass this ordinance, which would cap incentives at 50%. We are requesting your support. The citizens of this city have never been in a more powerful position to change development policies which hurt the taxing jurisdictions, especially school children, libraries, and mental health clients. A yes vote would provide a more thoughtful process as to when, how, and where tax incentives should be utilized in Kansas City. It would ensure that our schools and libraries are better funded and our mental health services are available to those in need. It would increase accountability and transparency regarding the awarding of incentives, and it would allow for uncapped incentives to be utilized in truly distressed areas of the city. Many of our present community groups stood successfully with KCPS to fight the BNIM project. The community groups then came together to form CKCEDR. Since that time, we have supported you in capturing funds from the Universal Flood Retention Project, from getting a commitment from a developer to increase the percentage of pilots to the taxing jurisdictions, and we work to change the financing of 3Light, among other projects. One of our main focuses has been increasing the amount of funding KCPS gets for our students. We have supported you and our students, and now we need you to support us and your students. The bottom line Children should not pay for luxury hotels and apartments. If we allow that to happen without doing anything about it, shame on us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Parks. It's now, I will invite Tom Love to come to the podium to address us on K1, K2, and appropriate skill level policy for first grade.
Does everyone have a copy? Does everyone?
Yes, we
Okay.
do. Thank you.
All right, so I'm here to speak about some of the challenges the students in the district have. 90% of the students are considered at risk, and we have 30% that are trying to learn English, because they're speaking a foreign language at home. We also have about 20% that have some level of reading dyslexia, and 30% are what we call summer birthday children, really young children. Now, for those of you who don't know, like I didn't know at all, and I went through elementary ed at one of the best teacher colleges in the country. They have the Teacher Hall of Fame there. But I went into 4th through 6th grade as opposed to K through 3rd. So I didn't learn anything to speak of about early childhood. But there's quite a difference between a boy and a girl that's the same age. They say it's about 6 months. So if you look at the oldest girl in a first grade classroom or kindergarten and the youngest boy, there's about a 6 month, a year and a half difference between the two. And if you were born premature, which happens in about 15% of the population in the black population, 12% in the Hispanic, and 10% in the white, that's another difference. Our kindergarten teachers are well aware of these things, and they know who's ready to begin first grade and who isn't. So I would like for the board to have a policy to allow those kindergarten teachers to make use of the training that they've had and to implement a K1, K2 kindergarten class. Back around 2012, I was told, or the district announced that there were 40% of the students entering kindergarten 11 months behind. That's a big gap. And those kindergarten teachers know how to close that gap if they're given the time and the tools. They need an extra year with some of the children, and they need a literacy lab, and they can close that gap. With an extra year, a second year of kindergarten, the students speaking a foreign language at home get another year to learn English. The students with dyslexia get another year of literacy labs. And the summer birthday children get a year to mature. Wealthier parents will hold out their kindergartners and keep them in pre-K an extra year. That dramatically changes the impact on that child. They enter school academically ahead, athletically ahead, and socially ahead. I'd like to give you a couple of examples of how we already have a policy like this.
I'm sorry,
we're at
Mr.
time?
Love, you've met your 3-minute time.
Okay.
But thank you so much, and we have the material you've provided to us. That concludes the public comment for this month. For the next component of the agenda, we will turn to the Board of Directors report. Before I turn the Board of Directors report over to my colleague, Mr. Manny Abarca, I feel it's in order for me to acknowledge that there's a particularly auspicious day today, and that is that Dr. Mark T. Bedell happens to have a birthday today. Now, we did ask him if he wanted us to cancel our board meeting or even shorten it, and I am here to tell you, he insisted that we have a very long board meeting this evening. And his family is very happy to wait for him into the late hours of his arrival. But on a more serious note, we have a card from the board. We have a container of cupcakes that will go home with you tonight. And there are cupcakes here on the table and out at the front table where the agenda is, so I hope you all will grab a cupcake and when you eat it, eat it with some joy for Dr. Bedell's birthday. It's a lot of work to be leading this district, but we are thrilled that he is here, and we appreciate him particularly as he's spending his birthday evening with us. So thank you all for enjoying that moment with us.
Some interesting comments here. Some very interesting things here.
That are not subject to sunshine law, so don't even try. So at this point, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Mr. Abarca.
Madam Chair, can I also acknowledge we've already eaten a carrot cake, I think, completely at this point. So, but okay, so moving on to the monthly financial report. I want to run through some things quickly so that Dr. Bedell most can get to his birthday celebration. All right, so we've got first slide here. All right, so taking a look at our revenues, I think it's important to notice that we are on track right now. Uh-oh, did I mess something up?
Nope,
Okay.
I'm talking to IT back there.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah, I'm making sure my paper aligns with my technology here. We're aligning to budget and ahead of last year, so in large part this is due to increases in local property and Prop C taxes as well as local grant funds that we had received. Some of those funds can actually be noted on the right-hand side of this slide in the variance column, specifically to the foundations and such where we've gotten these grants from. State funding continues to decline as more charter schools grow and expand. So it's important for us to note that compared to last year, this is an area where we have declined. In the expenditures side, the support services are higher than last year as budgeted due to the additions of the 2018-2019 budget that includes intervention supports, registrars, and curriculum softwares, which are all elements that I believe the previous board had approved. And all, I think that we can all agree that we need. In terms of plant services, which is an area where you see a pretty dramatic difference between the 70.13 and the 79.50, you'll see that the expenditures are most notably something that has dramatically changed, but some intentional reductions this year and realignment has caused the more efficient use of custodial and maintenance. So our revenues and expenditures line graph, skipping the little pie chart here, this is just one that you can see how our money continuously gets separated into the different columns and categories. But this last one shows us a comparative for spending, expenditures, and revenues from the previous year to this year. If you note on the 2018-2019 budgets, our lines are not directly connecting, and it's anticipated that we are actually going to not spend in our reserves this year and actually be putting money back into our reserves, and that's how you see the different line trends there. Mostly because probably Ms. Gwinley is amazing and Dr. Bedell's staff is outstanding at spending our money efficiently. That's not within our statement here. I just made that up. So,
But it's true.
it is true, absolutely. And this is an important statement. This gap that allows us to be comfortable recommending two items this evening that uses reserves from this year for one-time expenditures, including the build-out of the Board of Education building to house more staff from Manual Tech and the renovations at Franklin to make a permanent home for operations and security. So those are our revenues and expenditures done really quickly. Hopefully I didn't miss anything.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions from the board on this report? All right. Seeing no questions, thank you, Mr. Barca. The next items of business are the report of the superintendent. The chair recognizes Dr. Bedell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And before we get into our presentations tonight, I did want to thank our faculty and staff members. I received various cards today. We had students at Northeast High School. I was over there passing out lunches today. The whole second period saying happy birthday to me. It was kind of crazy. Some faculty over at Lincoln sent me a little link. And so I'm very thankful to be able to be where I am at the age of 45, not ever think here in the first be in this position where I have an opportunity to have influence and impact on the lives of so many, and I get to do it with a wonderful group of people that's in this room, this board of directors, and this community. So I am thankful, and I'm very humble, and I don't take any of what's happened today lightly. This is my job. I love what I do, and I know my 7-year-old is disappointed right now because she wants to know when we're eating cake and ice cream, even though her birthday is 4 days away, but that's another story. So thank all of you, and I want to get started with our, we have several items. Superintendent report, we have an MCC concept ideal update that we wanted to provide to you all that I think is going to be a potential explosive partnership. We want to give you an enrollment update. We want to go over the technology plan. We did this with the previous board, but we need to make sure that the current board has an update. And then the 1920 budget development, and then we have 5 regular business items. So we'll start off with the video highlight, which will focus on our employee recognition ceremony.
We are KCPS.
Staff engagement has been a critical focus for Kansas City Public Schools during the 2018-2019 academic year. Pillar C of the strategic plan recognizes the long-term value of investing in the members of Team KCPS. That requires ongoing opportunities to listen and respond to staff members and to make them feel valued. With that goal in mind, the Department of Human Resources hosted the 2019 Retirement Service and Excellence in Education Awards banquet on Thursday, May 9th at Union Station. This is always one of the most important events of the year for KCPS. The theme of this year's event was Reign of Unity. KCPS has hosted the banquet for several years to honor the contributions of longtime loyal employees, plus those who are retiring. The MC was KCPS Chief Human Resources Officer Jennifer Collier, and the event featured remarks by 2019 Teacher of the Year Diane Mora, Superintendent Mark Bedell, and School Board Chair Patty Manser.
We wish you the very best and ask you to keep our students in your heart. They need champions, and there are no better champions than teachers like you. Remember that you took on the hard work that builds a community. You found teacher friends who shared your joys and woes, and you touched the lives of many. So as a parent in the Kansas City Public Schools, thank you so much for everything you have done for us.
In addition, this year's banquet included the debut of the Excellence in Education Awards, made possible thanks to a $50,000 grant from SchoolSmart KC. The Excellence in Education Awards were created to recognize educators, support staff, and administrators who go above and beyond for our students. The award honors KCPS staff members who bring innovation, equity, excellent attendance, leadership, and more into our buildings. The 2019 Retirement Service and Excellence in Education Awards demonstrate once again that Kansas City Public Schools is fully engaged in making sure that we are truly investing in the people who are serving our students.
Madam Chair, we will move on to the MCC update, so I will make my way over to this side because I'm one of the presenters. So I will. Thank you. All right, I think we're ready to go, and as you can see here, there's several individuals that will participate in this conversation we're getting ready to have with the board. Myself, I have Dr. Taiwan Lee. She and I will be the lead presenters of this presentation, and then we'll have support staff, as you can see on the screen, that will present with us. And I know at some moment I'll pass it over to you, but I wanted to start off just saying to each and every single one of you that we're really ecstatic to bring this presentation to all of you and members of the community. We have a strong partnership with MCC, and you will see that as we go through the presentation. But I want you all to know that what we're really thinking about is how can we propel what we're doing around workforce and economic development for Kansas City. And so what you will find in this presentation is an overview of MCC, an overview of the existing partnership that we have with MCC, the vision for future partnership with MCC and KCPS, and then ultimately, what's the answer? How do we ultimately create a true system that addresses the workforce and economic development issues that we have, or the holes that we have? And I think you all know Governor Parsons is really big on wanting to see that there is a tremendous focus in this area. And you all know that, as you will see in our presentation, we've been very intentional in this area too as a school district. We simply believe that we should have our kids graduate out of this school system with a completer. And the only way that you can do that, in my opinion, is to be able to figure out how to collaborate and leverage resources that will allow for us to get to the end game a lot faster. And basically, the way that we're configured right now, the amount of space that we have over at Manual Tech that is not being utilized, we couldn't think of a better opportunity to potentially make this happen with KCPS and MCC. And so I'll pass it over to Dr. Lee.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, and KCPS faculty, staff, and administrators. My name is Tyon Lee, and he's going to get it right one of these days.
Oh, yeah.
He'll even on his birthday. MCC's mission is preparing students, serving communities, and creating opportunities. And one way of doing this is by having, it's not moving, this one. Okay. Is by having 5 campuses throughout the Kansas City region. And so we have MCC Penn Valley Campus, Maple Woods, Blue River, Longview, and the Business and Technology Center. At each one of these campuses, we have an institute. And so, for example, at Penn Valley, we have the Health Sciences Institute. At Longview, we have the Automotive Institute. At Maple Woods, we have our Vet Tech Institute. Blue River, we have a Public Safety Institute. And at Business Technology, that is where we have most of our manufacturing apprenticeship type of programs. The Manual Tech building and partnership will actually turn into our 5th institute, which will become our Manufacturing Institute, and that will be connected to MCC Penn Valley. Is it the operator? Oh, it went too fast. Okay. And so a part of our institution, we have secondary education tracks, and this allows students to take dual credit or dual enrollment courses. And so last year, our board voted to reduce the tuition for individuals who participate in either dual enrollment or dual credit by 50%. Amazing. We're focused on student success and access. And so we have a number of early college academies throughout our district. Each campus actually has an early college academy. So at MCC Penn Valley, we have the Early College Academy, which is the oldest early college academy. Then we also have the middle college program, which actually started last year and had our graduation a couple weeks ago, and thank you, board chair, for attending. This program has allowed us to really expand our reach and really assist students to not, who left school to finish their degree and then transfer to MCC in either one of our CTE programs or in our traditional track transfer programs. Those students who participate in those programs are more successful because they are above 85%. Those students actually transfer to four-year institutions with scholarships, or they go right into the workforce. So we're really pleased with having our students on campus. So the vision moving forward, I'm going to turn it back over to the birthday man.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Lee. And so as we think about the vision forward, we want each and every single one of you to be aware that it really goes back to what we started off in the presentation. Our goal is to bring workforce to the urban core to spark economic development in the field of skills gap. And we know that as you think about the answer and what that answer will be, it's pretty simple. It's really looking at our strategic plan, right? And we think that we have the formula for what we need to do. It's already built into our strategic plan. think everybody in here is fully aware that that was a comprehensive development of the community to put this together. So everything you see in here is what our community has basically dictated that we need to do. You look here on our strategic theme, we talk about 21st century critical thinkers and problem solvers. That falls under Goal 4. And ultimately, we want every single one of our kids to graduate globally competitive. We want them to be creative thinkers. We want them to be innovators. We want them to be able to collaborate and communicate in a way that will really allow for them to represent at a high level when they enter into the workforce. The strategic theme, goal number 5, and this is critical, readiness for college, career, and life. We want every single student to graduate from high school with a post-secondary plan and the experiences and preparation to execute that plan successfully after high school. And then ultimately, when you think about Pillar B in our strategic plan, we talk a lot about the fact that schools can't do it alone. That's where we need to have these types of partnerships. Resources aren't readily available to do some of these things that we want to do at scale, but if we can partner with various other institutions, community entities, and some of the philanthropists that are out here, we have the ability to make something like this happen, and it really does fall within our strategic plan. So here's where we are. As you can see here, we have at several of our schools, East High School in particular, we have 6 career pathways available for our students. So this is about a 1,100 student school. So when you have the type of numbers that we have at East High School, you're able to give these students a much richer experience from a core, from a non-core, or an elective course experience. So you can see all of these kids are being placed into pathways that they will be able to graduate with at the end of their 4 years and have some type of completer. Central High School, you see the 4. Lincoln, Project Lead the Way, but Lincoln is an IB school. So IB is the major focus at Lincoln. Southeast High School, we have computer science and business. And then you can see what we have at Northeast High School. And then our hub is Manual Career Tech Center. And as you can see here, we have about 9 pathways that we currently offer at Manual Tech. In a facility that size, we have so much more space to do so much more. And so, as you can see now with this proposed partnership, here's what we're looking at. If we're able to ultimately enter into an agreement with MCC, here's the additional programs that we will be able to add on that campus: welding, HVAC-R, and just HVAC, engineering technology, building maintenance, manufacturing, industrial technology. And our kids will be able to take advantage of these courses right on that campus. They will have opportunities to enroll in dual credit courses. They can get dual credit or associate's degrees utilizing CTE opportunities, which right now our early college just offers them an academic associate's degree. So this is another path for kids that really want to engage in more of the hands-on and the job career training readiness aspect. And then think about this. Look at the apprenticeship. This is another amenity that will come with this partnership. Transportation, manufacturing, construction trades, computer science information systems, client relation management. And these are things that our students will be able to graduate from high school and they can feed right into those apprenticeship programs. And we think that it's something that's very, very important, but I think it is a huge value add for some of what we're trying to do with Manual Tech in this partnership with MCC. Am I missing anything, Doc? And they get paid. That's right, they do. They get paid for the apprenticeship. So that's another piece of another benefit. So ultimately, what we talk about is there's a purpose with this, and that purpose is to create equity and access, increase the number of dual credit offerings. We want to double enrollment at Manual because we know that we have a lot of space. Creating a partnership. So if we have it in this one centralized area, it makes it a lot easier for businesses and individuals to come in and work with the students. And this would be available for anybody that has an interest that lives within our boundaries. We may partner with other traditional school systems that may want to enter into MOUs to take advantage of this instead of having to go all the way out to the Northlands or having to go out to Lee Summit. So it's something that we're doing for our community, and we think that it's just something that's going to be great. We're given an opportunity to continue to move forward. So at this point, we want to talk about the transformation process, and we'll bring you up.
Good evening. So I just wanted to keep the momentum going. I'm Don Crushell. I'm from MCC. Again, not to get into the nitty-gritty of it all, but we're going through a transformation process at MCC, and more specifically, we're looking at how we need to retire the BT campus, the Business and Technology campus. And more specifically, where do we relocate those programs? And those programs, we've been on a path of discovery. And that discovery path is provided here in this slide. MCC has been investigating multiple options. And again, I won't go through the whole slide, but one of the key things here is that, okay. So you'll see is on the path that as we looked at 4 options of where we can migrate the BT programs to, the road thus far is manual tech has been identified as one of the best options. It's viable, and so we're seriously looking at this opportunity to partner with KCPS. So what we have done is we somewhat to demonstrate our seriousness is we've again collaborated with the school district to look at could we even fit into manual tech with the programs that we're talking about, and this slide pretty much gives that information. I don't know if you wanted to say anything.
We are definitely tag teaming tonight. Most important from our lens, from district leadership, when you look at this, that first column where we talk about the tech center, 255,000 total square feet, 185 of usable space, because there's a lot of things like elevators and boiler rooms that don't count. Currently, we're only using about 50,000 square feet on a regular basis, plus then some office. So we have 83,000 square feet available in that building now, with less than half of how we're using it being used for instructional purpose. So our goal is to realign that, thus the request you're going to hear later tonight to move some staff out of there by building out here. When you get over to the far right column, once we're in partnership, we're able to house all of these expanded programs, leave room for expansion in our own programs, and still have roughly 40,000 square feet for future use.
So this is what we're looking at. As you see the map, this is one of the things that we kind of discovered as we went through the investigation is that there's an interest to have a separate entryway. And so we're looking at the west side of the building, as demonstrated by the little star. And then more specifically, what does that look like? We're looking at this is what we would do to enhance the west side of the building with MCC's own entryway, so as not to disrupt the operation of the high school that's still there. What's going on at Manual Tech? So I don't know if there's more.
That one's you.
So I think it's Dr. Bedell, isn't it?
Oh, okay. Is it me?
I think so.
All
Next
right,
steps.
thank you. So we're back. So a couple of things that we wanted to share with you. We wanted to conduct this joint presentation. We had already shared with you all the discussions that we have been having with MCC around this. We want to be able to ultimately just say, is this a good idea? Is the concept good? Is it something that we need to be able to continue moving forward with? And we want to be able to make sure that we have your blessing to continue to move forward, to have this dialogue. During that period, we would like to be able to continue to have discussions and potentially develop the significant details that need to go into a partnership like this, and then ultimately to present for approval to KCPS and MCC boards at that business meeting in July. That, this is where we are, here's what we want to do, here's what the cost will be. And I did want to make sure that I made mention of this. The building is grossly underutilized. We not only want this to be an enhancement for students, we want this to be an enhancement for our families, for the adults, for people who are already working that may need to come in and get additional credit hours so that they can receive promotions. And they can do it right on a bus line, right there in a centrally located area. We also want this to be something that's open from 7 a.m. until 9 p.m. at night. We want it to also be something that's open 7 days a week. And because in some cases, we also have adults that need to be able to get their education on Saturday and Sunday, but we also will have students who will need to be able to go in, and if they really want to accelerate what they're doing and earn original credits and those kind of things, this is an opportunity to do that on Saturday and Sunday. And I could tell you as a former supervisor in the district, we actually had Saturday and Sunday school from 8 to 4:30 for a period of time to really help our kids that really needed to meet graduation requirements meet it. And so there is a demand, and I think people will show up to do that. So our next steps, as we stated, finalizing what the renovation needs are and cost estimates, finalize a funding plan, including long-term use agreement with MCC. This is what we're anticipating the project will be around 22 to 25 million. Create a transition plan to move KCPS non-CTE staff out of that facility. Request final approval of the board directors, and then to begin to work on industry partnership agreements for KCPS programs and expansion. And then, as you can see here, here's basically a high-level project timeline, and I don't know if that's any of yours, but I can just cover it since I'm dominating here. But yeah, I'm used to doing this, I guess. So as you can see here, this is the timeline, and it's a pretty aggressive timeline. But I think we also have to keep in mind that we have to act in a very urgent manner when it comes to this, when there's a lot of push from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education that we move, that there's a lot of push from the governor, that there's a lot of push from industry right here in Kansas City that's saying that we're not doing enough to produce job-ready students that can come out of our programs and feed right into industry, and they can make a great living. And so, and then ultimately, we would like to be able to have this open fall of 2021 to begin the work. And so that's where we are, and I think we'll open it up for questions at this point if you all want to come up.
Mr. Abarca?
First, to both of the teams, thank you all for this innovative and very transformational project and concept that you're bringing to us. I mean, I think in terms of a comment, this is truly filling a gap that is needed, in my opinion, in this community. As you look at the airport and the hotel projects, there's a major conversation about the diversity of our tradespeople and the lack thereof to fill some of these roles. And this is obviously a direct pipeline from our students, preparing them for future careers, providing them with providing them with future education opportunities. So this is a tremendous opportunity for us, in my opinion. So I look forward to hearing more about this and seeing the development of these projects and proposals. One thing that I think I'd like to see more of is the inclusion of labor in this in some way, in terms of, I think they have a role to fill here, that within their apprenticeship programs and things like that, there's an element there that I think I would like to see personally. And so I think I'm willing to help. I know I think some other board members around this table are willing to help with that. So kudos to you all for bringing this major change opportunity for us for the positive. So thank you.
Mr. Hogan?
Yeah, so thanks for the presentation. A couple of questions on the financial side. So can we talk a little bit, Ms. Quinley, about how... Oh, wait, actually, this is for Mike. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, okay.
Can we talk about how we plan to finance this and then pay for the financing of it? And then I have a follow-up question.
So I'm going to give you a fairly vague answer as we continue to negotiate and work on those things. Yep. So we want to make sure that this works long-term for both entities, because it's a significant investment. And so we want to make sure that the commitment equals the value there. So because the building belongs to KCPS, we would need to borrow those funds. And our conversation right now is that principal and interest payment during the life of that debt would be repaid using rents from MCC, and then in exchange for that, once that's paid off, they would need some long-term access to the building to get their full value of their investment out.
So they're essentially going to pay for the loan that we're going to use.
That's what I'm hoping.
Theory.
We're still having that conversation.
Yeah, okay. So a follow-up question would be, how are we evaluating the sort of financial outlook of MCC to ensure that we mitigate any sort of financial impact to KCPS in the event that they're not able to pay?
That is an also critical component that we're talking about in our use agreement, because if either party needed to or wanted to step away for some reason, we need to make sure that both party has protections inside that agreement when we get to the end of it. So we'll make sure we address that and bring you that information.
Ms. Wolfsey?
Thank you for the presentation. As your, another thing to add to your list, just the forecasting of the student enrollment over a long period of time, I think will be really important, and how, where you're getting that forecast, and not, I know we like to just, not just pulling it out, but where we're going to base that forecast on.
Ms. Cortez?
With regard to the apprenticeship pathways, are those existing pathways, or are those pathways that are going to have to be created for this program to be effective?
These are current existing pathways that we have at MCC through our corporate college area, and with potential for more.
Dr. Jones?
This is really exciting. Thank y'all for presenting. The only question I have right now is just, have you done it, or will you add to your list to do a forecast of the impact this might have on other high school enrollment? So I can imagine being in another high school and seeing something like this and being like, whoa. So if you could just.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the goal is we want to fill manual tech up, and we have a lot of students right now that don't have the ability to take advantage of these types of courses, and ultimately what it will end up doing, if you fill up the building and you have these classrooms at the actual sizes that they need to be, I think it benefits our schools and their ability to be able to staff a lot easier. It gives them more balance in their classes, but it's also taking and utilizing what we already have at manual tech, but with these enhancements, to really now have a much healthier class, because right now we don't. I mean, you may have some classes where we may have capacity for 20 kids that need to be in the class, but we only have 9 students in there, right? And so ultimately we're paying a full FTE, but we're not running a full class. So what this will do is reduce some of the inefficiencies. When we've been talking to you all about the system analysis and how inefficient we are, this will ultimately help accelerate that, because then some of these programs we're offering will offer a different level of interest, in addition to having actual, like certified professors there that our kids will also have advantage to take advantage of their knowledge. So we think, I would tell you the other piece is, right now we have a couple of charters that we have partnered with where they are sending their kids, and we have MOUs with them. So we think that we'll be able to really grow this program, because there will be more interest. It's very expensive to run high school type courses. And so for some of our charters that are really interested in wanting to partner with us, we'll be able to also see student growth in that manner, with them being able to take advantage of the amenities that we have at Manual. Go ahead.
I wanted to add also, Dr. Jones, in the state of Missouri, there's a tuition calculation where any public school that chooses to send their child to another for a class or for anything can be billed tuition, which is basically our cost of education. And so if we can maximize the surrounding districts who won't have these kinds of offerings via tuition-based, then we'll increase our efficiencies tremendously.
Thank you. I really appreciate hearing about this opportunity. I know it's in early development. I mean, you've probably farther along, and there's additional information that we're obviously going to look forward to hearing. We want to understand better about the cost implications, the impact, on our current financials, but it is definitely something very exciting, and so I'm really looking forward to learning more. I will be interested, similar to Mr. Hogan, hearing more about the financial outlay. I do have a couple of questions. On the programs that you've identified, on the proposed programs, and Dr. Lee, I apologize if you said this and I didn't catch it. Have we surveyed students, or have we studied local industry needs to identify the programs that you would want to locate within this facility?
These are current programs that we have at our Business and Technology Center, and we have a number of businesses that reach out to us about the programs that we have. And so in addition to that, we have each of those programs, they have advisory boards. And so the advisory boards help us to understand what are the industry needs. And so we continue to have those conversations through our Workforce and Economic Development Division.
So what?
Can I
go ahead.
Can
Yes.
I chime in?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I want you all to know, like, there's This is a part of the plan. I mean, we're in conversation right now with Kaufman on our real world learning initiative. So we're engaged with them right now about the work we're doing, and that's pretty much the majority of the districts in the metro area that surround us. So we're having conversation about that, which ultimately will result in us being able to offer even more opportunities for our students. We did survey our students, and Rashawn's here. They basically told us some of the things that they want. So we're also looking at enhancing what we're offering on our side in addition through, whether it's an enhancement with CAPS, whether it's a partnership with Train. There are a tremendous amount of things that we're doing. So you almost have 3 different aspects of what we're trying to do to really maximize and enhance what we're offering over at Manual Tech. 2 of them are things that we're working on independently that we've engaged our students with, and we actually have that plan too.
Fantastic. So that helps me, because I do agree with Mr. Barca that we want to make sure that we are sort of matching what future, current and future workforce needs are. There are substantial, identified industries where they're going to experience a shortfall. We hear about that a lot, and so and also drawing in the labor unions and the skilled trades, and bringing them in those roles as partners. So I look forward to that. And again, I understand this is initial, and you'll be bringing more information to us, and perhaps it will be tiered in a way that we'll have opportunities in interim before you come forward with a final MOU request.
Yes, we will. We will.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, and our guests. Thank you all for presenting with us today. Moving on, we have the enrollment, and I just want to make sure that we just remind everybody that this is an enrollment update. So, Garrett, we wanted to make sure that we just kept our board up to date as to what's happening and what the numbers are looking like. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bedell. Good evening, Madam Chair and fellow board members. Thank you for your time this evening. I'll try and keep it to the point and be sort of brief. I know we have a long meeting tonight. So first off, we're just going to give you a quick update on where our enrollment stands right now. Currently, we had a decrease of about 191 students, or about 1.3% from our official October count day. 54 of those students we did graduate during this school year, which accounts for about 28% enrollment loss after count day. You'll notice that 20 schools have a decrease in enrollment from count day, 11 schools have an increase, and 2 of our schools remained flat. No change. Let's talk about where our students are going or where they're coming from. New enrollments from charter schools since the first day of school. As of the 16th of May, we had 862 students that transferred in to KCPS schools from charter schools. Of those 862 students, 20% actually enrolled after the fall count day. You'll notice that we have about 52% that came from one of 6 charters, those being Banneker, which closed, Banneker Charter School, which closed, Hogan, Guadalupe Center, Frontier, KCIA, and Brookside. New enrollments from charters. We noticed that we had 862 transfers, which is about 20%, or 169 students that enrolled after our fall count day. 46% of those students came from one of 3 charters, and those big 3, we call them are Hogan, Guadalupe, and Frontier, where students, the majority of our students are coming from after our count day. Moving on, we'll talk about where our students are going. We'll talk about the SY19 transfers out of KCPS. You'll notice we had several thousand transfers. 27% of all outgoing transfers are actually staying within our system and going to another KCPS school. And then you'll notice that we had, of the transfers going to the charter schools, of the transfers going out to nearby public schools, and we're talking about our suburban schools. 35% are going to public schools right here in our area, suburban public schools, and 23% are going to our charter schools. And we'll notice next where our students are going when they leave KCPS. And over the last 3 years, we see some trends. Students really staying steady in terms of the percentage going to nearby districts. That's suburban districts, Raytown, North Kansas City. And then our charter transfers are actually declining. So we see a steady decline in our charter transfers. So they're decreasing. And then our homeschool transfers actually have doubled in this school year from 4% to 8%. Uh-oh. I heard uh-oh in the back. Okay, here we go. That's never good. All right, let's talk about our online enrollment system and how we're actually serving our Kansas City families. In 2017, we implemented a new online enrollment system. Before the system, we had paper applications. Parents had to go to actually each individual school to apply. So every signature school that you want to apply to, you had to walk in the building and apply. There was really, we lacked accountability standards. It was really difficult to measure how our process was actually serving our customers and our clientele. And then there in some schools, like a Border Star, we had long lines of parents that would stand in line beginning at 8 o'clock in the morning, 11 o'clock in the morning, all the way until 7 o'clock in the evening. After our online enrollment system, we showed an increase of about 200%, or actually over 200% in first day signature school and applications in 2017. We now have a centralized enrollment system. It increased access to all of our KCPS school options, which simply means that there were a lot of schools that parents didn't really know about. And so being in the application, it gave them all their options, then they were able to choose in one simple step. We now have accountability through the Office of Admissions, and we have measurable results with no lines, and we also have, most importantly, public transparency in our enrollment process. So talking about our online applications, SY20 applications, you'll notice that we have received over 4,700 online applications for the 1920 school year for pre-K through 12th grade. Our traditional entry grades are kindergarten, 7th, and 9th grade, and they have received and accepted the highest amount and the highest rate of seats. The numbers that you see before you represent 2,144 unique students. So of course we have over 4,700 applications, but that represents 2,144 unique students. All right, we'll give you a quick update on Lincoln College prep enrollment, high school and middle school. Currently, we are standing at 96% of the projected enrollment for Lincoln Middle, so we are very excited about that. We are almost there. We anticipate and fully anticipate meeting 100% of this goal, and I'm looking to meet that by the end of June. So hopefully the next time we come back to speak with you, we'll be reporting out that we have met and exceeded that Lincoln Middle goal. Lincoln College Preparatory Academy, the high school, has already surpassed its enrollment projections at 103%. So we're trying to figure out where we're going to put kids that are on the waiting list.
No, I think we'll be fine because ultimately we can have a projection, but one thing I've learned in the 3 years of being here is that not everybody shows up. So I just want to make sure that that's out there.
Absolutely. So we are paying special close attention to our rates of students that don't show up, looking at previous years, and then adjusting our actual acceptance rates according to those, which is why, moving forward, you'll see the acceptance rates over 100% in order to account for the attrition and the students that don't show up. Thank you, birthday boy. Don't say uh-oh. All right, we're going to talk about new student recruitment. Kansas City Public Schools, in probably, 150 years has not really had to go out and actively recruit students. We captured our students right here within our district, and they came to our schools. We saw in 1999 the introduction of charter schools into our system. What you see before you are the names of the original charter schools in 1999 and the market share that they captured in that year. They captured about 12% of the Kansas City market share. Looking forward 20 years later, they now sit at 47% of the current market share. And so when we ask the question, why does Kansas City Public Schools, or why does a public school need to recruit? This is why. Choice is why. And so the superintendent and cabinet approved us to hire 2 dedicated recruiters for the district to implement a recruitment system. In January, those recruiters came on board, and we actually hired 2 very well-experienced recruiters with over 30 years of experience, and they just happened to be graduates of KCPS, of Paseo, and Lincoln. The purpose for them is to really increase the visibility and the accessibility to our schools. Their goal is to recruit 200 students by August 2020. Some think a lofty goal, but we think it's definitely achievable. We want them to boost awareness, recruit and build relationships with our prospective families. More importantly, we really want them to implement a system, a structured, organized system of recruitment teams, and we'll talk about that here in just a little bit. And part of their onboarding, the recruiters did a 60-day recruitment assessment of all of our schools. They went out on a listen and learn tour, finding out really what was happening in the buildings, how were schools recruiting their students, and what systems did they have in place. We looked at 4 areas of interest: recruitment, marketing, recruitment activities, and then we assessed their recruitment readiness. What we found out, very interesting, is that 11% of our schools had a current recruitment team, which means 89% did not have a current recruitment team to recruit students into their school. We found that 89% of our schools did not have a line item for marketing in their budget. Okay, I'm not doing that. We got a helper somewhere. All right. So I'll back up. We found that 89% of our schools did not have an active recruitment team within their buildings. 89% of our schools did not have a line item for marketing within their budget. And then in terms of activities from January to the end of the school year, we had 10 schools that really had 4 or more activities planned for recruitment purposes. And then we have 4 schools that had 0 activities planned. So everybody else kind of fell somewhere in the middle. Some of our schools that scored really high on their recruitment readiness, and when we say recruitment readiness, we're really talking about the components that you need for proper recruitment, not necessarily the execution of recruitment. And so those schools were Banneker East, Foreign Language, Lincoln, Longfellow, and Southeast. When we talk about what this looks like in an organization standpoint, this is just a brief setup and flow chart of what our organization would look like in terms of our recruiters, with lead ambassadors, staff ambassadors, parent, alumni, and student ambassadors. So kind of digging into that a little bit more, we felt it was very important that the principal be a part of the process, but not be ultimately responsible for the process of recruiting. And so we developed a system in which there will be a lead ambassador that will be a staff member at the school. That lead ambassador would be the lead trainer, if you will, for staff members that are ambassadors, parents, alumni, and students. Looking for an opportunity for our students really to get some community service hours, looking for our alumni to have a way to tie back into their schools, for our parents and SACs and the DAC to have a meaningful impact in their school buildings, and then for our staff to also have a meaningful impact and to get some further involvement in their school. This process and this system would result in us having anywhere from 525 to over 1,000 KCPS ambassadors out in the public representing our schools. So we're really building a system and a structure to help spread the good news about KCPS. In implementing this process, we have 4 phases. One is really bringing on our lead ambassadors, getting them trained and selected, then our ambassador recruitment and the ambassador training, and then school level implementation. I think it's really important to note that in selecting our ambassadors, we want you all to know that the selection process is not about a building leader or staff personnel picking someone that they like or someone that is charismatic, but really there's going to be an application process and really looking at the qualities and the skills that they have available that will make them successful in recruiting for their school. Projected timeline from May until July of 2020. Right now we're implementing this in 3 schools. We're getting a quick start with some of the schools that scored high in readiness, Paseo, Carver, and Foreign Language Academy. We're identifying lead ambassadors and presenting to the rest of the principals so that we can get buy-in at the building leader level. So from there we looked at really just how we can train all of our ambassadors, and so we're really looking at a train-the-trainer program. So our recruiters that we hired on will train the lead ambassadors, who will then in turn and collaborate with our recruiters to train the student, parent, alumni, and staff ambassadors. Again, our goal is to recruit 200 new students, and I have to reiterate and just kind of stamp that again, 200 new students. I think a lot of people believe that what we are not is student retention. And so we are looking at bringing in new blood, new students. And so quite simply, we're talking about bringing in new students from charter schools. We know where the students are, and we're going to get them. Okay. All right. Tweet that out, Manny. Yeah, tell all your friends. Okay, so just kind of talk about what type of success we've had with our recruiters so far. They've only been here just a few short months. Unfortunately, we had 2 school closings with KCNA and Pathway, and so we hit the ground running. This is what we call, some people call it low-hanging fruit. I call it the fruit that's really on the ground, and we just need to get out there and pick it up. And so we put into place a plan to really go out and actively recruit and create good relationships with the students and the parents at KCNA and Pathway. And see, these are some of the items and some of the dates in which we went out to the schools, contacted parents by telephone. The parents have been bombarded in the last 3 to 4 weeks with telephone calls, with visits to their school. In fact, we're at both KCNA and Pathway tonight, which is why our recruiters couldn't be here tonight. We'd like for you to have met them. So that's resulted in KCNA bringing on us recruiting actually 18 new students currently. We've had a number of applications, about 42 applications, and 18 of those have already accepted their seats here in KCPS at various schools. And then Pathway, we have about 12 students with application, and 7 of those students have actually accepted their seats as of today. So it is working. It is not a process that we're going to see massive numbers overnight. It is a process that will take time, and this is the work that you see and the results that you see is really, the results of 2 people working. And so when we can get over 500 to 1,000 people doing these same sorts of campaigns, these same sorts of tactics, you're going to see much, much better results. So thank you. We'll turn it over for questions.
Thank you so much. I'll turn to Ms. Wolfsey.
Thank you. You know how excited I am to
I
see this
know.
presentation. But I am going to have a few questions.
Let's go.
Some of which actually I'm hoping Ms. Quinley may be able to answer. So I'm going to start at the end.
Okay.
If we add 200 new students, Ms. Quinley, what revenue would that be for the district?
When you said you had a question, we predicted that was it, Ms. Thompson and myself. So actually, the district is advantaged when we bring new students in who are currently in the charter system.
And that's what I'm
because they do receive roughly $8,900 of state and local support, and so that basically brings us $8,900 per pupil of new revenue when we do bring kids in from charters.
And that's just 1 year.
That's
So if we keep them and we get them at kindergarten, multiply that by 12, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. So I just like to set that stage because that's why this is so important, especially given the revenue constrictions we have. So this is a way out and a way forward. I'm going to actually then jump, I won't take super long. I just want to set up another question. So the SY enrollment where we see the drop off, because I think it's important, that we understand what we think is going on here so that it informs what we do on the recruitment side. So I'm not sure that you have the answer, but, why do we think enrollment has dropped, from October count day to May versus well, I don't know if this is versus last year. This is just the drop.
This is just this year.
Do you know what it is compared to last year at this time?
I do not have those numbers with me at this time.
And that's okay.
Okay.
I'm just saying that as we start to, and I have a bunch of other questions, but I want my other colleagues to be able to
Sure.
ask theirs. One of the things that I think we really need to understand is why are people leaving us? And I know that there's been some market research that's been discussed as taking place, because I think that as we start to recruit, we need to make sure we're addressing some of those things in our recruitment.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Barca?
All right. Thank you. This, I agreed with my colleague. This is incredible data information. The plan is incredible in its presentation today. I guess my question specifically lies in slide, it's not slide 39, there's no way. It's like the third slide, the new enrollment from charters after count day.
Okay.
Right? I'm interpreting this correctly that our increase here is Hogan Prep, Frontier, and Guadalupe centers. Is that right? In terms of
The
where students are going
greatest
to?
number of students.
Right.
Yes, sir.
So Frontiers in the Northeast, Guadalupe centers in the Northeast, right? But then as we look at, well, and also as you look at the decline of students enrolling, you've got some of your major enrollment pitfalls at Northeast High, East High, Northeast Middle. Why then, as you look towards your plan, is there not a focus on any schools in the Northeast?
When you say your plan in terms of recruitment?
For Paseo, Carver, and FLA, right? Those are your
Yes.
three focused initial.
Those are not our focus. Those are our schools that really scored higher in their readiness. And so some of our schools in the Northeast scored much lower.
Sure.
And so really getting them off to a quicker start is not feasible at this time. And so we're really going to be starting, some of our schools, like in the Northeast, we're going to be starting really at 1.
Sure.
And so when we talk about the schools that we're getting implemented right away, those are schools that have recruitment teams. Those are schools that have processes in place that are going and doing events on a regular basis. And so those are the things that we're looking to implement in really all of our schools.
Sure. I guess to challenge that, I see potentially an opportunity where you're bleeding out the most, you have the least ability to solve that problem. And so I'll challenge the team to try and look at that, because I sat on one of these boards, and I'll tell you, academically, there's major issues, but somehow parents seem to flock to that school. And so I think there's greater opportunity in the area where we have greater need. So I will challenge you in that way, and leave it at that.
I accept your challenge.
Mr. Hogan?
Mr. Webster, thank you.
Mr. Hogan, you're very welcome.
It's Webster or Weber?
Webster.
I got it right, okay.
Yeah, you're on it.
So quick question, do we know the sort of demographic and academic makeup of some of the kids who are going, well, all of the kids who are going to and from charters?
We do. We don't have that information for you tonight, but we do have it available, and it can
Could
be
you get
produced.
that and maybe share with the board? I think it'd be interesting to look into
Sure.
that. Okay.
Absolutely.
And then one sort of other, I guess, not a statement, or not a question, but a comment on the recruitment side of things, and I'm going to be saying this a lot, probably for months, is on your ambassadors, I'd add board ambassadors to that list as well. Like, we should be actively engaged in being ambassadors for the school district holistically. So please include us in your plans as ambassadors for the district.
Duly noted. Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Ms. Cortez?
Mr. Webster, thank you for your time, and I would echo Mr. Hogan's comment about using us as ambassadors. We're here to serve, truly. Can you give us a sense of how the enrollment changes that you showed us for this school year compare to the past year or two? Are we slowing the trend of exit? Is it comparable to last year?
We're actually pretty comparable to last year. What we find is that we have a number of students that transfer out, and then we have a number of students that transfers in, and we're really close to almost breaking even in terms of the number that goes out and the number that comes in. And so, which is why the recruitment team is really important, so that we can push those numbers so that we have a net gain rather than a break even or a loss.
Okay, I have one other question, and that is, will the recruiters be focusing on recruiting at early childhood locations to effectively increase our kindergarten enrollment?
Yes. So that is definitely part of our plan, reaching out to our early childhood centers, our current KCPS early childhood centers, as well as external early childhood centers and the marketing team has already been doing some school tours. And so we're looking at actually taking that, expanding that, and really deepening the relationships with these early childhood centers. So we know that really our focus areas are kindergarten, the ninth grade, and then middle school is where we're losing our students. And so we're going to be focusing on that as well. You're very welcome. Thank you.
Mr. Wasserstrom, did you have a question?
And hope they're transferable so we can bring some of the charter students in the West Corridor back into the Kansas City public school system as well.
Absolutely. We are recruiting Kansas City public school students, and so that includes all four corners of our district.
So I think one of my questions, I'm sorry, Dr. Jones, I'll be right with you. I'm sorry, I apologize. I'm coming back to the KCPS enrollment SY19 slide, and we may not have enough information for this evening, but I'm very interested. I'm looking at the drop in enrollment for SY19 at Central, Northeast, East, and Southeast, and I would love to understand a little bit more of that. What are the contributing factors? Are there any possible interventions that we're looking at implementing that might stem the outflow if we have a good understanding of what's contributing to that outflow? And I know your work is enrollment and bringing them in,
Right.
and I'm sure that the retention piece probably falls more within the educational division or maybe even in parent-family engagement, but those are fairly substantial numbers, and I'm not expecting an answer as much as I'm really wanting to understand what's happening there and where we have the chance to engage those children and families in a way that keeps them with us and maybe responds to some of their concerns. So I just want to put that out there. The other question I have is regarding the online enrollment system. I know there was incredible activity in those opening days. There were also some families who were feeling incredible anxiety and distress when they discovered that they were on wait lists. Does the system does not allow parents to hold multiple seats
No, it does
at
not.
once in our system?
No, it
Okay.
does not.
But it's possible that families are applying and holding a seat in one of our schools and potentially applying to another public school, specifically a charter school within the district. And so they may be holding a seat that they don't intend to use. Is that a possibility?
That is a definite. So right now, we have our system, which a family can hold one seat. We have the school app KC, in which a family can hold one seat. And then we have the schools in which that were not a part of the school app KC. A family could actually hold one seat there. And they could also, if we have a charter family that's applying, they could also be retaining the seat that they're currently in. So right now, a family still has the potential to hold 4 seats in Kansas City.
So that creates unbelievable inefficiency, and it's concerning because I'm assuming when a family is actually applying to get into our schools, they may well want to be in our school, but they, at least from some of the communication I receive from families, that we are their first choice, but in fact they find they're not getting into their first choice. So what is your process for making sure we keep those families in some kind of communication loop and process them as quickly as those opportunities come open so that we don't lose them? Because, you know, especially at that young age, when a family makes a selection for a child at a very young age, they're unlikely, you know, we may lose them for several years.
Right. So if I'm understanding your question correctly, it's how do we make sure that our families that are on the waiting list we communicate with them effectively as to not lose them somewhere down the road. And so what we do is we really work, the Office of Admissions works very closely with all of our school buildings and our secretaries and registrars to follow up each and every day on our online applications when space comes available to release those seats to the families on the wait list. When the seat is released in the system, a family is texted and emailed immediately, and that family then has 5 days to respond to accept or decline that seat. And so that is a process that we work on very diligently. Again, the system allows us oversight to really work in collaboration very closely with our buildings to make sure that that is happening for our families.
So just a comment, and then I want to pass the question on to my colleague down the table. But what it really means is with all these various systems, in fact, it makes it really hard for schools to really plan and understand who's going to come to their schools. And we, in fact, may think a family's accepted it, but we may not find out until the first day, the first week. And so we're holding and planning for a child who may, in fact, not come to us.
That is correct. And you know, we have some of our schools that have placed some additional layers in between acceptance day and the first day of school that allow us to really kind of weed out whether or not families are going to come. And so there's different orientation processes. There are different layers of accountability in which students and parents have to provide information or provide course classes and accept course classes, which then adds additional layers of acceptability for them to actually show up on the first day.
And let me just chime in because I want to make sure that people who are in here and people who are watching this live stream hear me loud and clear. Let me tell you what this does to us. When we don't have the ability to figure out and have an idea of who's coming in and when they're coming in, it impacts our ability to staff properly. And then we're in a situation where we are fighting for students. And it's hard for me to tell principals that you need to put a cap and turn away families, but I'll give you an example. We did it at Paseo this year. We got far more students than we anticipated, and we continued to accept students, and then we found ourselves in a situation where we didn't have proper staffing because we had too many students. And then for the parents who are, you know, they were like, we got other options. If I'm sitting in the class with students with 40 students, then I'm going to leave. I'm going to withdraw these kids out. And so it makes it very difficult to be able to truly make sure that you're having staffing. And then you don't want to overstaff because then you overstaff, and then what are we doing with these teachers? And it's something that we've talked about that we have to begin to really take a look at because we don't want to be in a position, and I said this to Cabinet, I don't want to turn away a single kid. They want to go to our schools. We need to figure out a way to make accommodations for them, but then there are some budgetary repercussions if we try to staff that way to really try to control for something that we really don't have any controls for those variables.
Dr. Jones and then Mr. Barr.
Thank you. This question is about marketing and messaging. And so something that I've been thinking about for quite some time is relates to conversations that I hear parents have. Well, my kid didn't get into Lincoln Middle, so I'm going to a charter. And so one of the things that I've noticed is regardless of which charter parents are talking about sending their kids who are applying or whatever, they automatically assume that the charter brand is better, and that there are better outcomes. And so I was the one holding up DESE paperwork showing, stratified data, but that was boring. People didn't really want to listen to that, showing pages. But to the point, how can the district, being collegial, being professional, have you given some thought to how you can convey to parents like a data-based message around, just because it's not KCPS doesn't mean that you're going to get better outcomes? Like, I feel like that's a real problem, that people just perceive that the charter is going to be the better option without looking at data, and that just makes me frustrated.
Well, you want to answer because you were looking at me.
Yeah. No. I got it. So, actually what you have here before you is really a summary of our larger recruitment presentation. And in that presentation, we really talk about some of the marketing pieces, and we rely very heavily on our communications department and marketing to help us provide the tools that our recruiters can use out in the field. And so one of the analogies that we use within that presentation really talks about the battle between cable and DirecTV. And as funny as it is, and the funny as the commercials are, they really came very hard and very cutthroat. And so DirecTV said cable is bad, DirecTV is good. And that's really what the charters did to us in 1999. They came out, and it took the cable companies, I think the cable companies took that from charter schools and said, whatever they're doing is working, let's use that. And so we have to come back and battle that, and not necessarily in that same fashion, but we have to come back and show that we are good. Charter doesn't mean private. It doesn't mean that you're better. And so what we also saw within our data is that over 30% of the families that provide applications and apply to KCPS are through parent referrals, word of mouth. And so with our 500 to 1,000 soldiers out in the field, we're looking to create a buzz, a word of mouth, in which parents are then listening to other parents, other students, because we also know that some of the deciders in their educational decisions are the students. So it's not just the parents anymore, and we're seeing that as early as second grade, and we've seen that even in KCNA. Please do.
Dr. Jones, I do want to add an answer to your question a little bit from my perspective. One of the things that we really need to do as all representatives of Kansas City Public Schools is exactly what you did, is continually tell our story. Every single one of us knows people in this community. So it's going to be one person at a time, and we all have a responsibility to hold up the successes of KCPS and to really tell our story and the successes that we're having right now. I do it in my community, I'm sure you do it in yours, but we really have to change minds one at a time and really broadcast the success that we've had over the last couple of years and that we will continue to have under this administration and school board.
My last piece to it is then we need to be consistent with our product. So whatever it is that we're doing in these schools, we need to be consistent. Whatever our practices are in central office, we need to be consistent, and then that's how you retain them.
One quick comment and then a question. I would challenge you again. You have, I think, several board members here who have served on a charter school board before. And I personally have served on one who is within some hold harmless timeframes, of which my last comment to that board was, understand if you do not fix your academics, you're not going to be here next year. And so I would challenge you to inquire of our minds as to how we sat on those boards and some of the different perspectives in that way. So one comment to that extent.
I appreciate that.
Secondly, have we explored this, I guess maybe common rumor or myth that there are some residency issue challenges within some of our schools, and how do we address those? As I have several parents who've questioned some of the residency situations of certain signature schools. So I'll leave that to you and see where that gets.
Well, what I will say is we know that we have tightened our loopholes as it relates to residency, creating some different policies and procedures that have lessened the ability to come in and create what we call education larceny, and that's stealing education from our taxpayers, and we know that is a punishable offense of a $1,000 fine and up to a year in jail. And so we've created some processes in place to help prevent that. We also have a residency investigator that has been with us now for about 5 years. We only have one, and so one person, and we have, you know, a number of cases, and she really investigates probably about 21 to 2,200 cases per year, which is a lot for one person. So we do have some processes in place. We do rely on our Kansas City Public. We rely on our schools. We rely on our secretaries to inform us if there are some signs and some signals where there may be education larceny in place.
Is there any role that our new registrars would play in that process or could play in that process?
Yes, actually they do a very good job in processing the documents coming in through the enrollment process, and we've been working with them. We have monthly meetings and trainings that we work with our secretaries and really reviewing documents. You know, one of the things that I teach is how to look families up within the tax records, how to verify those from Kansas to Missouri, and so there are different little tricks and little things that we can do. Again, we've had some really great strategic partnerships with Kansas City, the city of Kansas City, and verifying utility bills like water bills.
I just want to make sure that for all intents and purposes, this is not to criminalize by any intent somebody who wants to provide the best quality education for their children. I understand that element, but simultaneously providing the best seat options available for our true KCPS residents is important, I think, to all of us.
Correct. And basically what I hear you saying is, you know, we have seats at some of our signature schools. They're limited, and when we have people who are not residentially supposed to be there, they're taking a seat from somebody that actually is paying taxes into those seats, and we agree with you wholeheartedly.
Thank you. And Ms. Wolfsey, I think after your question, we're going to close this out, and I'm going to ask for the board to share other kinds of questions into the administration, direct additional requests for information, because I know we have some other agenda items this evening.
I'll make it quick. It kind of goes right back to what these students brought in. It costs money to also market to them. And we as a board need to remember that if we're going to ask, you know, if we want to grow our enrollment, there's only so much we can do. I love the idea of the lead ambassador and using our parents and our students and our alumni and even the board. But let's be honest, the charters are not just using their word of mouth. They are actively recruiting with direct marketing, with mass advertising, and we will probably need to do the same. So remember that when they come to us with a budget that we need to approve.
All right.
On that happy note, I'll turn it back to Dr. Bedell.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Webster, and thank you for the questions. And Ms. Wolfsey, yeah, we appreciate that last piece. Absolutely. So we are ready to move with our technology plan. We want to give you an update on what we're planning to do for the new board in particular.
Hello, Madam Chair, members of the board, and Dr. Bedell. I'm very excited tonight to bring you up to speed with the great projects that my amazing team's been able to accomplish this year, what we're projecting next year, and then our future projections for the next 5 years. So first thing I want to hit on is that we are letting the strategic plan drive everything that we're doing in my department and ensuring that with all of our oars in the water, we're rowing in that direction. So we're aligning with 4B to make sure that all of our students are able to use appropriate digital tools and resources to do all the things that they need to do in the classroom. Additionally, we are aligning with key actions 2.1 out of Pillar A and 12.2 out of Pillar D, just to make sure ultimately we want to have the best educational technology ecosystem in the KC metro area and in the country. So to make this happen, we are using 2 frameworks to guide all of the work that we're doing. We're using the COSIN framework, the Consortium of School Networks, and we're also using the Future Ready Schools framework. The COSIN Ed Tech framework is what is guiding my department to transform from an IT department into an educational technology department. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a couple of minutes. But basically, what I want to highlight on this slide is that information technology management is just one of the 10 aspects of a viable and healthy Ed Tech framework. And then next, I'll let our Assistant Director of Educational Technology, Mr. Javier Alfonso, talk about our Future Ready framework.
So along with the COSIN framework, we're using the Future Ready framework to collect data from all our stakeholders to really get an idea of what is the reality and the perception that our stakeholders have of our technology infrastructure. So these are the key areas that the framework hits on, and it asks the stakeholders to share their perceptions, their beliefs, and their experiences with that structure. So here in this framework, we look at the curriculum and instruction, assessment, professional development, the budget and resources that are aligned to the technology, the community partnerships that help develop that tech, the use of the space and time around the technology, the infrastructure, and then the leadership, not only at the building, but at the district level in support of the ed tech. So some of the data, and this is just a quick snapshot for you guys, I'd be more than happy to share the bigger picture, but the data that we get back from these surveys gives us information around those beliefs and perceptions around the professional development. How are we setting out the expectations for the integration of technology and the use of those devices? So these are just some 5 little key points that we pulled in addition to some 4 additional data points. So you can see it has a variety of data, and like I said, I'd be more than happy to share with you guys the full report from the stakeholders around all those sections. And I'll turn it back to Joe.
Thank you. So what this data really showed us is that we need to shift our focus from information technology to educational technology. So if we look here, a typical K-12 tech integration system looks something like this. So you have the teacher, and you have the students, and then you have all of these tools and resources built up around the teacher to make sure that effective teaching is happening in the classroom. And then separately from that, you have a technology department who is choosing and vetting devices that will then go into the classroom to the teacher. And then in a lot of districts, it's up to that teacher to figure out how to use that technology effectively with the curriculum for the students. And what we want to do is make sure that we come into a system, that is more like this. And it is a web of resources working together so that technology is not driving the technology that goes into the classroom. We need to work with our curriculum people. We need to work with our school leadership, our professional development teams, our parents, our guardians, our business units, and everybody who is involved in the education of our students in order to make these technology-based decisions so that when we put tools out into our classrooms, our teachers know how to use them effectively so that we're really getting the value add out of the money spent on these tools. Additionally, reaching out to the community, this presentation was presented by me to our DAC last week, and they had some very good feedback that we've now taken and we're reincorporating into the plan. So one of the main highlights that we got out of the data that we got back from Future Ready is our staff technology training. And what I want to do right now is just show a quick video that highlights that if we don't train our staff, they're going to train each other. And so that's a silly video, but it does highlight what the reality is out in buildings when teachers don't get the training that they need, when our staff members in our different departments don't get the training that they need. They will find a way to do what they need to do. And so by partnering with our school leadership and with our CIPD departments, our divisions, we are able to now align the technology that we're bringing into our district with the actual curriculum that's being brought out to our teachers. And so what our department is going to be doing is teaching the teachers how the technology functions. We're not going to teach how it is embedded into curriculum, and Javier will talk about that a little bit more here in a second. So what we have here is our very first, we'll call it a success of this new model, where back in the fall, the previous board approved the purchase of Chromebooks for grades 3 through 6. And this was one of the first times that the departments partnered together to create a training, provided that training to all of the teachers for grades 3 through 6 before these devices were rolled out. And we noticed that that had a huge impact in how those devices were accepted by those teachers. You know, no longer was it some department at central office pumping up these devices and then dumping them. It was, you know how to use these now, and there's a lot of excitement around the devices coming in. And so I just want to show you kind of the reward and feedback and reception that we got as we delivered these to classrooms.
This is Kansas City Public Schools IT department. We're getting the new cards to the teachers. The kids and the teachers are super excited. So I mean, it feels good to get them exactly what they've been wanting and asking for. So you know, hey, we're just doing what we do, you know.
Okay, so as you can see, there was excitement when we were taking that technology out to the classrooms. There was less anxiety than we've seen before in the district of teachers having technology placed upon them. And as we do our walkthroughs, we're seeing the technology be used, and we're still seeing excitement months later. And the ways that these technology devices have been used has been so powerful. There's kids down on the ground, on their stomachs, doing exercises and drawing, and I'll keep this brief. But anyway, so I'm going to move on to the next point, but that is just incredibly exciting to see, because it's something that, you know, from the district I came from, we just took that for granted. That was just what education was, and it's so powerful to see that coming to KCPS. So the next thing that I'm going to do briefly is talk about Moore's Law and our hardware-software cycle, because this drives all of the technology changes and updates and refreshes that we have to do. So just quickly, Moore's Law says that the number of transistors that can fit on a chip are going to double every 18 months to 2 years. And so what that really means for us is our technology has an expiration date. And because it has an expiration date, our software expires and our hardware expires, and we have what we call the sync cycle. And so just briefly, I'll take you through this slide. We're calling, for the purposes of this presentation, hardware dad and software mom. And then as generations of software and hardware happen, you'll see the generational growth down there. And as you get down to the 5-year to 6-year mark, you lose what's called backwards compatibility. Our new software will not work with old hardware, and our new hardware will not work with our old software. And because of that, we have to stay in sync, and we have to make sure that the purchases that we do in order for the district to get the best value happen in a timely manner. So right now I'm going to bring Javier back up, and then my Assistant Director of Technology, David Anson, to talk about the current projects that we have.
So to stay in that sync cycle, this coming year, we're going to be introducing iPads to our K-1 students, and we're going to kind of piggyback off that model with the Chromebooks, where we're going to train the teachers prior to coming into the school district, into the school year, and get them trained on their device so that when they get back to their classrooms, they're ready to go. We're also going to partner with, obviously, curriculum instruction and with Apple to provide support to our coordinators to help integrate that tech into their curriculum, so that as we're training teachers on how to use the device at a basic level, they're getting their support on how to integrate that tech into the curriculum, and then they can pick up that piece of the training. We're also going to be introducing interactive flat panels into the district. So we're going to be replacing our current projection devices with interactive flat panels that are basically a very large 65-inch tablet that the students can interact with, 20 students up there at a time. Teachers can project wirelessly, wired. They'll also have an onboard computer for the teachers to use. We're going to also partner with that model of working with the vendor to train our teachers on how to use it, and then work with our curriculum and instruction department on how to integrate that tool and all the tools that come with it into the curriculum, and kind of hit the teachers from both angles of getting you trained on how to use it and then how to integrate it with your curriculum. We are also working on bringing on board a new help desk system along with an asset management system. So we've been in the one-to-one world for about 6 years now, and we have not had a way to track our assets. So moving forward, starting July 1st, we will have online a system that will track all of our assets, who has it, where they're located, where we can find them, and the history attached to that item. We're also going to be bringing on board, as we've been hearing this from teachers for a long time, just looking for the right tool. We're going to be bringing in Lightspeed Relay, which adds a layer of content filtering to our devices, allows our students not to go to inappropriate sites, but it also will allow teachers to manage those devices in their classroom. So they'll be able to block out the screen when they need the students' attentions back up with them. They can monitor what the students are doing at that time, and we can also generate reports to parents of what their students are visiting during the day and after hours. The content filtering will also help at home. So anything that they're doing on that device will get relayed back to us, and we'll have that information. And we're going to give you a quick little video on what it entails.
As technology is put into students' hands and integrated into learning, there are a lot of things you need to do to get your mobile learning program going, keep it running smoothly, and make sure that all stakeholders have the help and information they need. Relay to the rescue. It makes it easy to do everything you need to do and everything you want to do. It brings together all your devices, every operating system, the new devices you just bought and the old devices on your network, even your BYOD devices, into one central platform in the cloud. It combines all those separate, time-consuming tasks, deployment, management, filtering, monitoring, tracking, reporting, into one integrated platform, so you're doing everything at the same time in one place. And it connects your data about your devices, your users, their activity, into one powerful reporting dashboard, so you're ready to monitor the use of your network, spot student issues instantly, and generate snapshot reports for teachers, admins, and parents. With Relay's advanced reports, you'll have all the benchmarking and comparative insights you need to maximize safety and productivity across your schools. Plus, it's made by the leaders in K-12 filtering, so you can rest assured that it will keep students safe. Relay isn't just a better way to do something, it's a better way to do everything.
So from the front end, student-facing, teacher-facing components, we're really excited that we're bringing all this on board. From the back end, we're going to be able to do a lot more and get a lot more data on our students, our devices, what they're doing, where they're going. We'll be able to share that with curriculum and instruction and start to give them an idea of that return on the investment on all these platforms that we've been spending money over the years. What impact is that yielding on our students? So I'm going to pass it to David to talk about some of the back of the house projects.
All right, so I'm going to try and make this really quick. Earlier in the year, we had gone to the previous board to talk about some of our infrastructure problems that we had noticed throughout the district. So one of those is our network switches, firewalls, and wireless access points. What we found out is those have been up to 20 years old in the district in some cases. And as Joe had mentioned before, with the sync problem, software, hardware, they don't last for that long. So we have successfully purchased and will begin installing all of this equipment over the summer from our summer projects, and we're really excited about that. Another project that we're going to be doing is badging our network closets. So when you put new equipment into a secured area, thinking about security, we want to make sure that we know who's been in those closets. So the badging system will allow us to log exactly who's been in it. When a employee is no longer with us, they will lose access to that immediately. No having to find keys to different areas, or do I have the right key to get into this closet? So we're going to be kind of coming to the 21st century, I would say. Another area will be one domain. So I'm actually really excited about this. We have 3 domains currently, which triples our risk in the security world. By allowing to shrink our footprint into one domain, which will be kansascitypublicschools.org, we'll bring all our students and staff into one area that we can protect and not have to make changes in each domain in order to stay current in each area. If I make one change to the domain, everybody is affected by it instead of having to make sure each group is successfully protected. Email security, we've actually already completed this, so I'm really excited about that. When we moved to Office 365, we got some of their security, and one of the biggest things we found is that our email malware and phishing, we were getting hit with somewhere between 100 to 105,000 emails, and these are individual emails. So if I get an email, you get an email, that's each one of those is another email per day before. With Office 365, we're actually helping protect, and it's not even entering our system now. It's just getting blocked right out. We're also quarantining a lot of things and allowing people to choose what emails they might need to receive. Oops. So backup and recovery. This is one of the first projects that I actually grabbed when I first came on board in November. I call it the 3-tiered system of protection. What it will provide is that we will be able to back up what is our current production information. We will also be able to move that into our what is considered a disaster recovery site, and then on top of that, actually back up that information into what we call a cyber recovery vault. That will only turn on for an hour a day in order to pull down those backups, and then they securely lock out, so nobody can get in, not even myself. The purpose for that is that if we get hit with ransomware or any kind of cyber attack, we have backups that we can come up with in a day instead of months, which is unfortunately what had happened previously. The last thing I'll talk about is the time and attendance tracking and payroll system. As you can see from the 2 pictures, we kind of still do paper today, as well as kind of a punch clock. We kind of want to modernize that, and what this will kind of allow is for accountability, ease of use, and it'll have an integration into our payroll system so that the hours can transfer directly over, no more manual enter. It'll be more of a review, and we'll have a lot more data at our fingertips to know where our employees, how they're spending their time, and allow other business units to kind of be more efficient. So I'll hand it back over to Joe.
Okay, so kind of lastly, we're going to talk about our 5-year technology refresh cycles that we have planned out right now for the next 5 years. So as you'll see here is our student and staff device refreshes. So for the next 2 years, you'll see year 1 is right now, and that was a Chromebook refresh that we did this year. And then we have 2019, 2020 coming up. You'll see the K2 iPads. And then what you'll see is that big line right there that says cycle begins. And that's when we plan to get on a 3-year refresh cycle for all these different grades and all these different types of devices. So if we, buy middle school devices, year 1, year 4, those get replaced, and vice versa for all the different grade levels. Additionally, every time that a grade level gets replaced, those students and staff at that building will also have their devices replaced at that same time. That allows those to be on cycle, as well as allowing them to have a more similar device to what their students have at that point in time. Additionally, Javier talked about the interactive flat panel rollout earlier. Just want to show you here, it's planned to be a 3-year project where we roll out based on grade level, K through 3 year 1, which is next year, 4 through 8 the following year, and then 9 through 12 the year after. And we plan on bringing that to the board in early July. And then we also are doing something that we call our application and software evaluation cycle. So something that we have found out here is we have a lot of historic software in our system, and we should be looking at every application, every piece of software, whether it's our SIS system, our security camera software, everything. We should be looking at that every 3 to 4 years to see, is this the best in the market? Are we getting the best value out of that, or do we need to upgrade? Okay. And then here I just want to show you what our current 5-year estimated projections are. We right now have next year planned out pretty well based off the needs that we've been able to assess. And we went ahead and we projected out 5 years. I do want to point out that as each year comes closer, we'll be able to finalize the list of projects that has to happen for that year, and we'll have more solid data as each year approaches. So just wanted to show you that we have planned out that far. And that is our presentation.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. This is a lot of work has been done in this area, I know, from being on this board the last few years, and a lot of work was needed to be done, so I appreciate it. Ms. Wolfsey?
Very quickly, thanks for the presentation. Can we, and I'm not sure if it would come from you or at the leadership side, eventually have the average time online students are spending in our schools by K-12, 3-6, and 7 through 12, so we can keep an eye on that. I think it's just something we're going to want to watch going forward. And then one of my big things is student data privacy. I know you're smiling because I ask about it all the time.
Yeah.
Can we, not now, I'm not going to ask any questions. That's something I think, honestly, almost deserves, Dr. Bedell, its own update or presentation in public, because I think parents need to understand what data is being collected and kind of what their rights are around that as it relates to students and the technology. Thank you.
Sure, absolutely.
Mr. Hogan?
Okay, so I have several questions. I'll try to go really fast and then shift to other folks if we need to in the middle. So one, if you don't follow Joe on, or Mr. Phillips, sorry, on LinkedIn, you should, because the guy speaks about leadership all the time, and I'm a big believer in sort of leadership philosophy and putting your team out there and being positive about them and just encouraging conversations around leadership. And so you should follow Joe on LinkedIn. So that's a little plug for your social media life. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for pushing tech forward. I mean, I'm a big believer that every kid, no matter of their socioeconomic background, their race, where they grew up, et cetera, they should all have the same access to the same sort of modern technology experiences throughout their educational experience. And so I commend you and Dr. Bedell as well for having the vision to sort of move this forward. First question is around uptime and responsiveness SLAs and associated penalties with all of your hardware and tech, software tech partners. Do you build that in?
So previously, the district has not built in SLAs or uptime requirements into the different out-of-district services that we have, or internally do that with the different departments that we support. It is something that we're looking at, especially with our data sharing agreements and our MOUs going forward. Uptime is very, very important to us. But the other thing that we're wanting to do is to rely as little as possible on external entities for our uptime. So, some of the other projects that aren't highlighted tonight are things like trying to get ownership of our own fiber ring for connectivity and redundancy, trying to make sure that the data places that we have aren't reliant on, Amazon Web Services, for example. That uptime we do have guaranteed for the ability to extract our data and upload our data for that kind of thing. But overall, it's something we are building and going forward, but it's something that the district hasn't had previously.
Yeah, I would definitely encourage that. We were at, I can't remember if it was Faxon or Wheatley earlier this week, and they were trying to use iReady, and it was down, and the immediate thing that I thought of is, man, do they have this sort of stuff built in so that you can at least recover some cost of your contracts through some of those relationships. And moving on to sort of the training element, by the way, Mr. Abarca could use some help with his Surface Pro. He had a hard time getting that all set up. It took an inordinate amount of time. So you talk about training here, but I didn't see much around adoption, right? They're two different things, right? It's okay to train someone on something, but how do you measure whether or not they're actually internalizing and adopting whatever it is you're trying to train them on?
Sure, and that's a fantastic question. And one of the things that we're doing is understanding where we are in terms of adoption. And the Future Ready data that we got back, I know we went through that quickly, but it did show our adoption rates based on the surveys that we received back. And one of the things that we're wanting to do to bring up our adoption rates is change how we're implementing So when we talk about adoption of technology, especially in K-12, we're really talking about the same types of barriers that our students have. So you have first order barriers, which are, I don't think my technology is going to work. I don't think it's going to give added value to my teaching. So we have to overcome that barrier by, one, improving our technology support. And two, showing the value add to our teachers. And that happens, one, by showing we'll be there when you have a question on how to use Google Classroom. Our building techs will be able to help you. When you have to input grades, our building techs will be able to help you. But also, partnering with our curriculum folks and our school leadership, we're going to be able to show the adoption coming throughout the entire organization, not just being placed upon the teachers as an extra requirement. Additionally, we're going to do adoption slowly. So when we roll out and when we start to do our main training, what my department's going to do is, this is how your device functions, this is how you can use it to do a few things, and here are a few things that we'd like you to start trying to do with it. Then with light speed, we'll be able to see how that use is actually happening per student, per teacher, per staff member, and we'll be able to see these different areas that, okay, K2 at this particular school, they're not really using this app very much, or science at this high school is not really using it. Let's discover why the adoption's not happening, and then work with our curriculum folks and our digital learning team to really craft some more training around the adoption, because we have to isolate what it is that's causing the barrier to adoption. And then there's the second order barriers too, which is psychological, which is I don't think I can do this, or I don't think it will work. And we have to have, like Dr. Bedell said earlier, we have to have consistency in what we're doing so that that barrier can slowly degrade. Once that happens, adoption upticks.
Yeah. Okay. And then final question, and I'll come full circle and stop. Do you have a feel for what your tech spend is as a percentage of your overall budget compared to like-sized school districts?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and one that Ms. Quinley's probably more qualified to answer.
Ooh, did I stump you? I guess my point there is if we can get in line with that, I'm certainly a proponent of pushing that sort of budget through. I mean, you definitely don't want to be spending less than your peers, particularly in a competitive environment like we have in Kansas City.
Right. So I can tell you, while Ms. Quinley is getting her answer together, that
she doesn't look like she's getting it together at all.
We're part of several organizations as a district. So we're part of COSIN, we're part of the local Missouri chapter MEDAL, and we're also part of the Council of Great City Schools. And all of those organizations ask the same question. What is your technology spend compared to your overall budget? What is that percentage? What's your ROI? Mm-hmm. And right now that's a range for different districts, and it's something that districts nationwide are trying to figure out and get under control. So while Ms. Quinley can tell you our current spend, knowing if that's enough or not enough is still a question that's really being asked all over the place right now.
Do you have an opinion?
I do have an opinion that I don't have a dollar amount opinion. What I do have in terms of Joe's personal opinion is we need to make sure we're reaching the impacts that we're going for. And we shouldn't be overspending for that, because if we are, that money could be better used somewhere else. And we shouldn't be underspending, especially when we compare ourselves to our suburban neighbors in the metro area. Our kids, like you said, need to have the same abilities or better abilities with technology and learning these 21st century skills than our neighboring communities.
Yep, that's fair. Thanks.
Ms. Cortez?
This is really less a question and just a kind of a follow-on to Ms. Wolfsey's comment and information maybe for another meeting, which would be to kind of give us some grounding in terms of Dr. Bedell and your leadership team, how you balance the use of technology and instruction. There's a lot of noise out there about where that balance is, and I just think giving us some tools to understand that and the perspective of the leadership would be helpful.
Absolutely. I agree with that. Mr. Barca?
Just building on to add to that same new presentation that's going to come forward. First off, thank you for showing me how to use this thing. That was a challenge, but we worked through it. So thank you. I think my elder colleague as well had similar issues. No, I mean, I think that at the previous board of education that I had been a part of, a charter school, they were specifically looking at technology and how it affected their testing scores. And I think this kind of goes towards my colleague Rita's comment here is, are we using the same tools and mechanisms for not just our testing, but ELA, ELL, ESL programs to make sure that we're most effective in that use for the academic side? Simultaneously, I think beyond the data protection side, are we balancing technology with the just general interaction of kids, right? So I think that is a broader discussion that I look forward to in the future. Otherwise, following you on all your social media platforms is great. So Twitter is also a very good way to follow Joe as well, Nate, so.
Dr. Jones.
Very quickly, and I'm going to make my colleague Nate a little bit mad, but Montessori parent here. And so I just wanted to make a comment just about making sure that, or requesting that you all balance the push for technology across all aspects of classroom life, understanding that some families choose Montessori so that they can kind of avoid some of that push. And so I know when all of the testing practice gets rolled out and testing of, iReady and all the different things, the push has been to use the Chromebooks and stuff for that. And so just understanding that for some, I would request some flexibility with families who might be uncomfortable with that for various reasons.
Yeah, and I would say this, and I think it's something we definitely have to figure out a balance on. But part of what we have to do utilizing these devices is to make sure that our kids are able to get the same kind of exposure that everybody else is getting. The state actually requires that you take the test online. And so being able to give them the exposure to build the stamina utilizing those devices, it's an absolute necessity. I don't think there's a way around that. But we did not intentionally say we're buying devices for the sole purpose of them being utilized just to help us with testing. It really was to give them the rich experience around instructional delivery, access to open up the world in a way that we haven't been able to open. We intentionally built our curriculum in a way where when you go in and you look at lessons and it's available for anybody to look at, you can click on links that will take you directly to connecting objectives and concepts that we're teaching students in a very interactive way. But I do know that, there's a balance that we have to have, but making sure that I just want people to know, we do have to build that stamina in there because that's how the state requires that we deliver the state assessments.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bedell. I think you can see that this is an interesting topic, and I think there were lots of good comments here. So we can plan and look forward to maybe a future rich discussion about the balance and utilization of technology and how we also use it appropriately in honoring other forms of instruction and delivery. But this is very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate the presentation. Great job. All right, we are into our final presentation for the night, and then we still have 5 business items and a consent agenda.
Go eat the cupcakes.
Development. Linda Quinley, we will pass it over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, Dr. Bedell, and Board. You had a lot of deep information tonight, and so we're going to add to that for you and make sure that you go home with a lot to think about. This is your first official look at the budget, and so we know that we're giving you a lot tonight, and we're going to talk about time you have to do a little bit with this later, but I think Mr. Abarca is going to get us started, so I'm going to click for you.
Yay. Actually, I'm going to use this one. All right, are we perfect? So I think it's important that as we look at the budget strategy as to where dollars are being spent, that we focus on this initial slide to make sure that we're aligning all the planning and strategy that we've already engaged in for the district is involved in the development of the entire budget process. So obviously you all can read. I don't want to go through all of this individually, but you can see here that basically the budget priorities are established off these plans. So going on to the next slide here. I think Ms. Quinley's team is deserving of a lot of credit, given the recent changes in the budgeting process and the justifications of new codes in different places. So I think it goes without saying, thank you to you and your team for all this effort, and I know you've been crunching a lot of information to get us to this point now. But looking at the overall budget timeline, obviously February 2019, the team began looking at the consideration of the strategic plan and board policies, working towards accreditation and establishing its budget priorities. Between February and May of 2019, the priorities and recommendations were made for the 2019 to 20 fiscal years. And then this brings us to today, right? So the preliminary budget presentation, which we'll have here in a few minutes. You can see, obviously, there are a few more steps here that lead up to the overall discussion and then final approval of the budget. And then some amendments that we have planned as part of the overall yearly budgeting process. So at this point, I will kick it back to you.
All right. Thank you for that. And I do want to point out two key players. We have a lot of people that work in the budget process, including our cabinet members and you, but Veronica Sarmiento, wave so they know who you are. She never comes to board meetings, and Erin told her she had to come tonight because this is largely her work, and so we appreciate her and we thank her for her time. Yes. And Ms. Thompson, of course, too. Collectively, they've done the heavy lifting on this, and so we appreciate them very much. You're going to hear from her when we get into the technical, harder part in a minute, but we're going to roll through some things that we hope will give you perspective and then begin your questioning and thinking as you go away these next few days and start reading this binder that we're excited to give you. This is a draft document that you're going to see. Parts of it we know are final and done, but there are other parts that we want to continue expanding for you, and so that's why you don't necessarily have everything that we're going to share with you. On this slide, we're just talking to you about what are the primary parameters and guidelines that we used administratively as we started the budget. So, of course, tying things to the strategic plan and focusing on what's good for kids. We used a zero-based budgeting model for the second year in a row to really have our budget managers think about what they need. And then we've done our staffing based on a tiered system that Dr. Shepard and school leadership created last year. We're going to look at that a little bit. Improvements to salaries certainly are made because we have active collective bargaining agreements that call for those average percentages, as well as those collective bargaining agreements calling for continued employee benefits at the current levels that our employees enjoy them today. And then our work to make sure that we're not bringing you something that jeopardizes an appropriate fund balance level. So these are our primary guidelines getting started. This page is one of my favorite pages. I think Kansas City Public Schools for years has had a great introductory page in their budget where we talk about some of this important information. We are the 13th largest school district in the state of Missouri for K-12, and then also, interestingly, for pre-K-12 of the 518 districts. So we're in the top when it comes to size. And I wish I had a pointer that worked for you guys. In the middle of that table on the top, you see student membership, September 2018 and January 2019. We talked about this last week when we were just having a little board 101 school finance. Those critical count days in the year average together, creating our average membership number for this year. That's a component we'll look at in a few slides that we use when we project student counts for next year's. So take your time as you look through this and you'll see a little more critical information about our makeup. Student enrollment, one of the largest drivers, of course, of most public school budgets. This slide shows you in that the top line and the bar there what the actual enrollment is, and there's a difference in enrollment and membership, and so this is enrollment from the count days. And you talked earlier when Mr. Webster was here about have we steadied that off, and you can see that we have the last few years. We're actually being very conservative out there in the far right column as we're saying basically flat enrollment for next year. If Mr. Webster brings in 200 more students and we have good success retaining who we have today, then we would actually see an increase. But for budget purposes, we're assuming a flat number there. Note that the decrease in, while we're assuming flat numbers of enrollment, that lower number, 13,438, is actually a decrease from the current year in the ADA calculation, and that's because we are projecting lower ADA coming out of summer school this summer, which relates specifically to the fact that we are having fewer partners. And we'll talk about that a little further, but when we have been using partners for summer school, and we still have some, but when we've used a significant number of those in years past, the revenue in equals the expenditure. So it's no net gain or loss to the district when it comes to revenues technically. I know I saw Robin put a battery in this thing. There we go. So this slide is another piece of information that's out there that you've known about, you're hearing about and learning about, the current expenditures per ADA from our area comparison districts, and then the very bottom, starting with that green number of 15,601, you see three peer districts in the St. Louis area that will have a school system or demographics that are a little more similar to us. On the right, for your reading pleasure, is actually how does the current expenditure per ADA get calculated, because it's not always what people think it will be. But important to note on this slide, City of St. Louis is the highest, but in the Kansas City area, we are higher than our peer districts in the metro area. And then you see down at the bottom the average for comparison schools, and at 11,736, and the Missouri average at 11,342. This slide is incredibly important, although it's pretty simple. The current property tax revenues that we receive, and you guys know why because of how charter funding passes and moves, is 79% of our total operating revenues for Kansas City Public Schools. There are few schools across the state where you're going to see that high of a local reliance based on funding. This slide, we've added some additional columns this year to give us a nice comparative view of property tax rates, because when you consider that local revenues are our primary source of revenue for the public school district, and that assessed valuation times property tax is the important calculator there, it's important to look at how our levy is structured as compared to other districts who may have the opportunity to do some other things inside their budgets. So those first two columns, incidental and teachers, collectively make the levy that allows us to run day-to-day operations of the district. Capital projects, school districts can, when they set their tax levy rate in September, we do ours in September, they can intentionally put some money into capital projects so that you can do some of those smaller things while you're waiting for access to GEO bond monies and those kinds of things. And then the debt service levy is set not at the time of tax rate setting, well it is, but it's set based on voter approved debt. You will notice that Kansas City Public Schools is the only one on that list that does not have a debt service levy. And that is because we have not had a general obligation bond since the late 60s. And so when we have $4.96 of levy for the operating, that levy is also at the end of the day covering what we need to do in the way of capital, which is very unusual because our comparison districts have money in columns 3 and 4 that they can use for that purpose, where all of our money is in column 1. This slide gives you some of the good information on that key assumption factor again around assessed valuation and property taxes. Good, that one up there is more legible than this one. This TV's playing color games tonight. So you can see that we do have preliminary assessed value information. This is a reassessment year. We've talked about the efforts that we participated in with the board's approval last year to help fund a very significant intentional reassessment effort. Those numbers are coming in. You can see in the far right column the percentage of increase by type of real property, so that collectively it's about a 15% average increase in assessed valuation for real property. We've got personal property flat right now. That tends to come in higher close to time as they actually bother to update new purchases of vehicles and boats and all of those kinds of things. And so we're going to leave that flat for now, so we're a little conservative on that assumption. Another key factor, our rate stays the same down there near the bottom where you see total levy of $4.96. We're estimating, and I'm in that shaded column, we're estimating a collection rate of 88.39% of what would be billed if they build everything that's assessed above. And the reason that we don't assume 100% is because there are successful appeals, there are people who don't necessarily pay their bills on time, and then there are fees to the county, and that gets us down to that 88%. So probably a little bit conservative, but not off base from our historical trend and based on what we know is coming. Proposition C revenues, this is the Missouri sales tax for education, and I'm going to just take you to the next to last column, those last two columns. In 1920, we are using a rate of $1,009 for this right now. Although I believe that DESE is suggesting that it could be 1,036, so we're going to stay a little conservative on that and see if that actually holds true, not over budget and over assume in this area. Very small increase per pupil, and this is paid per pupil. We have a decreased number on the next line of students that it will be paid against, and again, that relates to that summer school calculation. I'll just remind you, it's really not a net loss for us because of the cost of summer school partnership relationships. That was a lot of shipping. But nonetheless, on this line, you're going to see a projected decrease in revenues. Property sources of state revenue, again, really interesting slide because I doubt there is another district in the state where you're going to see 0% coming from that state foundation formula. And in the text box, you'll notice that that relates to the fact that we are passing through those local revenues to charters in that manner. And so right now we're projecting zero net foundation formula next year because of the supporting the charters on the local side. Am I doing that? Are you okay? I'm like, wow, I barely touched it. It went. So expense considerations for 1920. These are some of the primary things, and we're going to look a little bit at this as we briefly introduce you to the document. Ongoing things that are considered and are included in this budget that we're proposing. The compensation increases at an average of 2.67% as per our current collective bargaining agreements. Funds to support insurance and retirement expectations to keep those in place for employees, and then of course contracts and items that we don't have control over and must have increases in, such as utilities, transportation, and property and liability insurance. Those are all included and considered in this budget document. There we go. So budget priorities for 1920, in addition to those things that I sort of refer to as fixed costs, you're going to see increased spending from the operating budget for pre-K classrooms, a special education co-teaching model for grades K-2, career and technical education expansion, technology infrastructure and devices that Joe and his team just did a great job talking to you about. And then continued use of the tier model for class size adjustments and math and reading interventionists, as well as social workers for social emotional supports. Those are going to be some of the bigger lines where you're going to notice differences. This is the total operating budget. So grants and child nutrition are not in here. It shows you in the far right column, we are bringing you a balanced budget at just over $213 million as compared to about $205-6 million this year. So there's about a $6 million increase in this budget. I'm not going to read this page to you, but this is the comprehensive total budget, and I should have put some glasses on. It's going to show you in the far right column, right at the head of the KC guy. Does he have a name? Skippy. Right on Skippy's head there, you'll see in the orange that total is $257 million. So this total budget is a $257 million budget when we look at all funds. So quickly, I want to take you through a few tabs in your binder. I'm going to ask you to stay with us. You have some little flags and stickies that we left, some of those little things you can peel and stick on pages in case you want to refer back to them as you get home, because we're going to take you through a few of these that we want to make sure you have the opportunity to review when you get back home. Maybe I'll just yank that out of there and it'll be faster for me. So tab 2, right behind tab 2, This is new work that we did as a collective team last year, again, following school leadership's lead as to what do they need in their budget. And I apologize to those of you in the crowd because you don't have this, so you can't see what I'm going to drive the board to. But right behind tab 2, the very first page that you have is the definition of Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. So you can see how those tiers were created based on student need, individual building to building. The next page gives you a little deeper information on how a school became a member of Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3. And then there are a few pages where we show you some summary by type of spend for Tier 1, Tier 2, and 3, title and operating by type of the reason for the spend. So I'm going to ask you to flip a few pages back until you get past that page that says 5 of 5. And then you get to a slide that says FY20 budget planning and says Success Academy at Anderson. Everybody with me? Now we've turned the other direction. I'm going to ask you to turn one more page and get to the one that says Central Academy of Excellence. I'll hold it up. It looks like this. Everybody with me? Okay. These are the detailed sheets that show you last year, or the current year, on the left-hand side, by building, and next year on the right-hand side as we're proposing. So you can see by type of employee, the FTE per building, and then in the far right column, the variance, increases or decreases in staffing. And in the bottom section below, you see the individual building title allocations, so additional resources that those buildings have. And then if they are a signature school, you're going to see those resources down there, or if they have other lines of access to resources to use in your building, you're going to see that on here. So this page gives you a really great picture by building of the resources that have been allocated. So I'd encourage you to hang out in that section for a little bit. We know that as you have the opportunity to take this home and read, you're going to have questions for us. Tab 3 is empty for right now, but we will fill it for you in the next week or so. Tab 4, this is a really important tab for the board that is going to walk through summaries of the additions and reductions by function or purpose in the district. So if you're right on that first page behind tab 4, I'm going to ask you to flip to the page 2 or the back of page 1, and you'll just so that I can guide you to a couple of good examples of what you'll see in here. So the first column is going to tell you what department this is and what kinds of things we're adding. When you get over into those next several columns, it's going to show you if it's an increase, a decrease in parentheses. If there are additional staff, you'll see that in the FTE column, or if there's a reduction of staff, you'll see that in the FTE column. And then the net total increase or decrease for that department. And in the far right column, as we've asked all of our folks to do the last couple of years, each of these primary adjustments are tied directly back to our strategic plan, so you can see that there. So we'll stay on that page 2, and we'll look at exceptional education. You see additional teachers and associated fringes, $495,000, 6 FTE, and that is Pillar A3 to tailor instruction and interventions to each student's strengths and needs. So we've given you this by function here so that you can know what adds up to that total $6 million increase that you see in this budget we're proposing. So I'm going to have you look at just a couple more things, and then Ms. Thompson will take you through the hard part, which is actually reviewing the document, because that's what a good leader does the easy work and lets the other people do the hard work. Oh wait, that's not right. Sorry. But Erin's going to take you through the hard part in a second. So if you would go to tab 5 and flip that up for me, please. Here you're going to see these primary revenue assumptions and the components, and we kind of have talked about this as you were learning School Finance 101, the primary things that impact what our revenues are and how they change next year. And so you're able to see that top section, what comes into the local property increases, state foundation formula, what assumptions we've made around projected enrollment, attendance percentage, how the weighting factors add to that for us. So we've given you some good detail there. Proposition C, the sales tax component, and then the transportation funding. So one more thing. I want you to flip to tab 6, and before Aaron gets you in the weeds, we've got a couple of big expanded pieces that we're working on this year that I'm really excited about for you, and Veronica and Aaron have really been working hard. So they're like, okay, Linda, let's go to the new DESI accounting code. Oh, and please, let's add a bunch of additional information in the budget document while we're at it. I remember them saying that. So when you get right behind tab 6, I want you to get the first 2 sheets of paper where you can look at them side by side. And this is an example of what you're going to get by function when we get you the final. Oh, wait, you may not. Are they in your books or are they laying there beside? Okay. So do you have a paper clip of some Word documents that look like this? All right. And then you have a loose sheet that has some numbers on it and looks like this. Did you put theirs up there, or are they at the back? They're in the back. I'm sorry. So go to the back of that tab. I'm sorry, behind the budget document. And then you're going to find these Word sheets. Have you found them, the narratives? So flip to the back of that tab. Are you finding them at the back of 6? The back of tab 6. Dr. Bedell, yours might be in the front because I put it in, yeah. There's several pages of yes, that's it, yep. But there's only one of these loose examples on the table. It says draft on it. You don't have this? Okay. Okay. So what we're doing with these pages that we're going to be adding for every DESI function, for the functions of the budget, is giving you this numeric history with a little more detail than the other budget document has in it. Not only the costs by type of spend, but as you look down on this final budget for this is 1111 elementary instruction is your sample we're giving you tonight. You've also got some critical information like what were our September and January counts for each of these preceding several years. So you can see some trend, and that's the trend data that we're using as we do work on these documents. And then that lower section shows you the FTE over time. So you can see where we've gone up, where we've gone down, and those kinds of things. And then right next to each one of these numeric pages will be this narrative, this Word document, where we're telling you what really is elementary instruction by definition. What do we see the mission of elementary instruction to be? And then at the very bottom, you'll see where it says variance discussion. And it shows you what additions or reductions are happening inside this function of the budget. So this is going to make a better reader's version of a really complicated document, we hope, and give you some good history and perspective on that. So Aaron's going to walk you through some technical pages. We know you'll probably have some questions, but we also think that you're going to want to take this home and read it and create questions over time. And just as a reminder, she and I and Veronica will make ourselves available for one-on-ones if you want to come spend a fun afternoon walking through the document with us. All right, I'm going to let Ms. Thompson take you through the hard part.
Good evening, everyone. We're going to start with tab 6, still tab 6, but we're going to pull out the recommended fiscal year 2020 budget. That's the actual big book of the budget. And the first tab is on page 3, the budget message. And Linda kind of went through that, where we're showing, this is required by DESI, of the budget document that we have requirements, components of the budget. And it tells you the priority of our budget, how we arrived at it, and the total amount of the budget. Right after that, you'll see our board item that you'll be receiving on June 26th. And on page 11, if you tab that page 11 with your tabs, you'll see our total requests. The total revenue projection is 257, 238,038. Of that, the operating budget was 213,035,913. You see grants of 30,114,448. I'm right at the top for our revenue. And then child nutrition revenue of 14,087,677. Right below that, you'll see our expenditures. We're balancing the budget this year. We have our total budget of 257, 237, 805. That's the amount we'll bring forward as our proposed budget. We also included on this page our fund balance. That's something that the board always wants to know, and the superintendent always wants to know our fund balance. And we kind of walk you through what our beginning operating fund balance was from Amendment 1 that we bought in February. We showed that we had IT projects that was approved by the board of $2.598 million. That was the board yellow dog, the items that were presented by Joe and his team, infrastructure. We also have on here already the renovation of the BOE and our Franklin for maintenance. It brings you down to your new fund balance of $60 million. And then we come down and we show our other restricted. We have health insurance, workman's comp, prepaid expenditures, and we come down to our final unrestricted balance of $51,412,000, which we have the percentage of the budget around 20%. Now, if you go to page 12, it's going to give you a summary. It's going to show you where we are now, the 257, 506,993 for our budget amendment for our revenue. Our current budget for this year, I'm in the first column, and it says A for revenue and B for total expenditures, 258, 786, 395. This year, the board approved us to go into reserves for 1.27 to do one-time purchases of software, iReady, Pearson. So that's the reason why you see that 1.279 in brackets. Next year, if you come over, you see our proposal. We're proposing 257, 237, 805 is our total comprehensive budget, including grants and child nutrition. That's a decrease of 1.548590 in our total budget. And again, we show our fund balance report. It's the same as the page in front of you. Page 13, 14, we break it down by fund and function. It gives you even more detail for you to look at. On page 13, if you tab that, you'll see the general fund, our operating capital, and our total operating budget. At the top, you see our revenue, then you'll see our grants and child nutrition, and then our total budget again of 257, 238, 038 for revenue. If you go to the middle of the page of 13, we start our expenditures and we break it down in detail by report level of every department. So when you turn the page 14, you see the total of our budget again, broken down by department of $257,237,805 is the request for the proposed budget for FY 2020. All the accompanying schedules will give you detail of all the revenues that we bring in, all the expenditures by department. The book, of course, is pretty thick, but we give you all detail of everything that ties back to those pages on page 14. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Abaka for the last part of the presentation.
Yeah, thank you. Next steps. Tonight's material is posted on Assembly for board members' sake, and tomorrow it'll be posted to the public website. Board members provide feedback by June 3rd, which gives us ample time to read all of this, naturally. and it is to be expected of us that if we have questions, we have proposed changes, that those would be submitted by that time frame. As we move into further discussion, the final document is to be available June 12th. And that is where no expected changes of information unless directed by the board, simply expanded information. Then we go into the public element of this, where there will be a public hearing here in the boardroom at 6 p.m. on June 12th. And then for final approval, it'll come before us on June 26th. So, and statutory obligation is that we do it by the end of June. So it is imperative that if you have questions, comments, concerns, proposals, whatever, you do that before June 3rd so we can continue down this track. I'll turn it back over.
Thank you so much. This was very well done, and really appreciate it. And thank you, Mr. Barca, for leading this process. So, and to that team that's put this together. So, thank you. Have I lost my superintendent?
Well, he was really, really hot, so I think he went outside.
I think he was maybe checking the air.
Here comes the
sir,
air, do you hear it?
While we're waiting for our, there he is. Here we go. So, Dr. Bedell, I think we are ready to turn this back to you.
Oh, y'all don't have any questions?
Are there any questions at this point before? I think people need time to digest.
I know it's a lot.
It is a bit of a fire hose, so certainly.
Thank you, though.
Yeah, certainly we want you to send your questions, come by with your questions. It's critical that you understand the document. It is complex, and so we want to do that with you so that year one you feel like you know everything you need to know.
All right, thank you for that presentation. Definitely, I'm very proud of what it's turning out to look like, so I really want to thank you all for putting this together, and very clear and succinct. And I think as we get to the final product, it will be something that will be well connected to our strategic plan, but also our board policies in Series 1.0, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. So we want to go ahead now. We have a couple of action items that we need the board to act on tonight. The first one is our Apple Inc. contract totaling $1,529,587 for 3,500 iPads, protective cases, and licenses for K-2 students funded utilizing Title I funds in the current year budget.
Thank you. So before us is the proposed resolution of move the approval of the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the purchase of iPads for grades K-2 with Apple Inc. in the amount of $1,529,587. Are there any questions regarding this proposal? You've already heard quite a bit about it this evening. So if they're seeing no questions, may I please receive a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any debate? Hearing no debate, we'll ask the secretary to call the roll.
Ms. Manser?
Yes.
Mr. Abarca?
Yes.
Ms. Cortez?
Yes.
Mr. Hogan?
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Wasserstrom?
Yes.
Ms. Wolfsey?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our next item is the, I'm sorry, I'm flipping through 2 pages here and just got thrown off. Okay, it is the board build-out budget request for $1 million. And this is to do the 2901 Truce Warehouse build-out. The $1 million one-time transfer of unused operating budgets from the current year to proceed with build-out of the warehouse to allow for needed space for the Information Technology Center and securing of the Human Resources Department space. This build-out will allow us to move multiple department offices out of Manual Tech Center, freeing up space for future CT expansion there for the use of the community.
Thank you, Dr. Bedell. So that is in order to receive a motion to move the approval of the recommendation of the superintendent of schools for the Troost Warehouse build-out budget request of $1 million.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any debate? Yes.
So I'm okay with approving this one contingent upon we update Simbly to include the actual invoice from the vendor specific to this $1 million. I think what happened is the $700,000 for a Franklin building was actually uploaded in place of the $1 million for the Troost, so.
Oh, I apologize. So the budget, that was a budget versus an invoice.
Yeah.
So you have the $700,000 in both places?
Correct.
Okay, we will correct that for you, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for noting that, Mr. Hogan, and we will get that fixed. Are there any other comments regarding this item? Okay. Seeing no other comments, the secretary can call the roll.
Thank you. Ms. Manser?
Yes.
Mr. Abarca?
Yes.
Ms. Cortez?
Yes.
Mr. Hogan?
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Wasserstrom?
Yes.
Ms. Wolfsey?
Yes.
Thank you.
There is a majority of the board in favor of the approval of the Troost Warehouse build-out is approved.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The third item is the Franklin Building renovation budget, and we're asking the board to approve $700,000 to build out. This is a one-time transfer of unused operating budgets of the current year to proceed with renovation of the former Franklin School, creating a KCPS Operations Center. The center would create a permanent home for our maintenance, custodial, security, and nutrition services teams, as well as allow for us to create a warehouse system for supply and food delivery, saving considerable amounts over time.
Thank you, Dr. Bedell. Are there any questions about this? Are there any questions about this item before we move forward? Okay. All right. So the proposed resolution is to move the approval of the Franklin Building renovation budget authorization in the amount of $700,000. It is in order to receive a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any debate on this item? Hearing no debate, the secretary will call the roll.
Ms. Manser?
Yes.
Mr. Abarca?
Yes.
Ms. Cortez?
Yes.
Mr. Hogan?
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Wasserstrom?
Yes.
Ms. Wolfsey?
Yes.
Thank you.
There's a majority in favor of the approval of the Franklin Building renovation budget authorization as approved.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item number 4 is our city year contract for $570,000. This is for the 1920 school year for services at East High School, Central Middle, Central and Central High School, Northeast Middle, and Northeast High School in Whittier. Funds are a continued investment from school leadership operating budget and building Title I funds. I do want to make this quick announcement that Whittier is an addition, and as I've stated with the board officers, when we work with our schools have their own budgets, and some of our schools receive a lot of financial support, whether it's being through Title I funds, or if they are a school that falls within a comprehensive school domain, then they receive additional funds to do the work that needs to be done. We do believe in giving our principals autonomy to come to us with a request around programs that they believe would better serve their schools. Whittier, their request was that they wanted to give City Year an opportunity, given that City Year has worked well in one of their feeder schools, and so they wanted to have that at the elementary level. So that is part of the reason for the increase at this point with City Year.
Thank you, Dr. Bedell. Are there any questions about this item? Okay. Dr. Jones?
My question is just with respect to how we evaluate the ongoing impact of this program, and will there be, upon what frequency are those reports provided?
You want to speak to that? I mean, I can, but I'll let you, because we've had this conversation.
We've been in conversation with City Year for the past year about impact and making sure that their impact is aligned with our strategic plan in all of those areas that we want to impact. We do meet with them quarterly, and we do actually plan to meet with them more next school year. But Mike Reynolds' department does program evaluations, and this would be a year for a program evaluation, and that is the reason why you see a one-year contract, because we did not want to do a multi-year contract, and we're doing that with all of our vendors. We're not doing multi-year contracts until we actually have a program evaluation that speaks of the impact, and those things that they're supposed to impact are academics, behavior, and attendance. And so we need to see, and we need to really be able to concretely measure if we're putting that type of money into a school. I would agree with everyone that we should see some measure in those areas.
And I would, just to follow up with that out, so when y'all are putting together your program evaluation design, I think it'd be interesting to see the perceived value of the board staff, building staff. So like just qualitative perceptions as well as the educational impact data or the assessment data. So
Absolutely. We'll make sure we include that.
Thank you. Are there any other questions about this item? Okay. Seeing no other questions, it would be in order to have a motion to approve the recommendation of the superintendent schools for the service agreement between KCPS and City Year Inc. in the amount of $570,000.
So moved.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any debate on this motion? Okay. Hearing no debate, the secretary will please call the roll.
Ms. Manser,
Yes.
Mr. Abarca,
Yes.
Ms. Cortez,
Yes.
Mr. Hogan,
Yes.
Dr. Jones,
yes.
Mr. Wasserstrom,
Yes.
Ms. Wolsey.
Yes.
Thank you.
There is a majority of the board in favor of the approval of the City Year Service Agreement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And our final item is the lawn firm for $250,000. This is an annual contract for mowing y'all know I'm tired, I just said mowing. Mowing services, recently bid. The contract begins this spring, crossing over 2 fiscal years. The contract is not to exceed the amount of $250,000 and is an MBE contract.
Are there any questions regarding the approval of the lawn firm contract? Mr. Hogan?
I have a question on section 18.1, which is dispute resolution. So is this typically how we craft dispute language? Because it feels very sort of, it feels a little weak, to be honest, as opposed to maybe having arbitration language in there. So it leaves things sort of wide open and stipulates that the two parties will come together and sort of work through it on their own. But that doesn't always happen very successfully, and it's not necessarily structured, where arbitration would be much more structured. So I'm just curious about that.
So let me just do this because apparently, I know they're pulling it up. Mr. Hogan, if we don't have the answer right now, because I don't want us trying to give you an answer that we can't articulate properly, can we provide that to you in a Friday update? Or we can come back and update the community if you want it explained in front of the community.
Oh, no, I'm not concerned about it being explained in front of the community necessarily, but do we need to get this one approved tonight?
Right, Ms. Quinley?
I guess that my main question is this sort of standard practice? And if so, do we feel it's a successful way to deal with disputes?
So all of our contracts come through legal review. A member of Mr. Thornton's team does these reviews, and this is the same contract language that's been in place with our mowing firms for some time. So without knowing for sure, I'm guessing that means that it has been effective. And so this particular contract looks exactly like it has for many, many years and probably is consistent with language we use regularly. But we can certainly revet that language and see. Neither Bill nor I have probably really had a lot of time to dig into this yet. But we are without a mowing company June 1st, I think, if we don't approve tonight.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't think we need to like stall this one. I would just, it'd be a good
Appreciate it.
conversation to have. Yep.
Mhm.
And I can talk a little bit about my philosophy about contracts and when you talk about whether it's arbitration issues. My philosophy is.
Bill, I'm sorry, you need a microphone.
I'm sorry. My philosophy is that you try to build those things into, because I'm not sure arbitration fixes it. Is it neater maybe than just saying you're going to do dispute resolution? Yeah. But the thing I suggest to folks, I've always suggested to folks, is that when you partner with somebody, be comfortable that when you partner with them that they're going to deliver, right? Somebody sells something, somebody receives something, and that's where you really will form a good contract. If you try to build language in later on with a partner that you don't trust, I don't know if arbitration or anything is going to solve that, because when it goes to court, a judge is going to feel, why didn't you guys work this out before it came to me? So I don't know if there is any magic language that will protect you if the two partners aren't good partners in the very beginning when they contract. But what I will do is I'll take a look at those closely and see if I think there's a better way. Sure.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions regarding the approval of the law firm contract? Okay, seeing no other questions, it would be in order to have a motion to approve this item.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any debate on the motion? Hearing no debate, if the secretary will please call the roll.
Ms. Manser,
Yes?
Mr. Abarca,
Yes.
Ms. Cortez,
Yes.
Mr. Hogan,
Yes.
Dr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Wasserstrom, Ms. Wolsey.
Yes.
There is a majority of the board in favor of the approval of the law firm contract. We are now moving on to the consent agenda. It would be in order to receive a motion to approve the consent agenda items. And if you would just state in your motion items 1 through 28. D1, I apologize, D1 through 28.
Move to approve items D1 through 28.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded. This will be a roll call vote.
Ms. Manser,
Yes.
Mr. Abarca,
Yes.
Ms. Cortez,
Yes.
Mr. Hogan,
Yes.
Dr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Wasserstrom, Ms. Wolsey.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. The motion passes. As we get ready to adjourn this evening, thank you, everyone, for the tremendous presentations, the phenomenal work and study that went into the effort, and for those of you in the audience who hung with us diligently through the night. I also want to wish Dr. Bedell again a happy birthday and hope he enjoys the rest of his wide open meeting.